Alper is the president of the European Leadership University, which is one of the organizers of this event. So Alper, the screen is yours.
Sorry. Thanks, Robert. Great to be with you, and great to have all of you here. I think joining from different parts of the world, not only Netherlands, but really, different continents. So I'd like to talk about leadership skills for data science, and actually, I want to emphasize leadership skills is as critical as the professional skills in data science field. And to be honest, my intention is to make this interactive with you, with all of our attendees. So what I would like to propose to you is, I think, first of all, look at leadership as from a different perspective. This is how we do it in European Leadership University. This is why we have it in the name. We look at leadership not from a power and authority perspective, not from a getting things done perspective, but we look at leadership more from a relational perspective. And we try to improve ourselves in different levels of relationships that we engage, and that when we are good and skilled in our engagement, when we are conscious and capable and aware in these relationships as data scientists, that makes us a leader. This is what we believe. So I want to make this a little bit concrete. As a data scientist, as a future aspiring data scientist, a data professional, you will be engaging relationships at different levels. So definitely starting with yourself. So your self-relationship awareness is important, which you will use at other levels like one-to-one when you work with your colleagues. So we call this one-to-one leadership. There are different skills required there. Then you will have groups like teams. There are different team leadership skills and competencies that you require. This is also very important for us. Then you can go beyond the teams that you operate or groups, which I call the organizational skills. So the way you engage with the organization is also another way of leadership. So it doesn't have to, you don't have to be a CEO to have an organizational leadership. Actually, the way you become a consultant, trust advisor, we will talk more about that. That actually makes you a leader, your awareness, consciousness. And finally, the community leadership we talk about, and data science, we talked about it yesterday, is a community of practice, and how you engage with that community of practice with different thought leadership practices is actually very, very critical. So what I would like to define, so what I want to ask to you at the moment, and you can write in the chat screen your feedback. Why do we need leadership skills in data science? Maybe a few sentences from the perspective that leadership is engaging on this one-to-one, team, organization, and community level relationships. Why do we need to have these leadership skills in data science field? Maybe I can have some feedback from you, from the team. So, okay. So I think, what I'm hearing is like communication is critical, because we have to communicate our work, our findings. We have to, our ideas, our insights from the data work. And sometimes we need to sell and these idea, and we influence stakeholders, enable them to for certain decisions. Fantastic. And I think also we have to work as some of the people, like get problem and results clear to stakeholders. Sometimes a colleague, sometimes a team, sometimes a organizational level person. So stakeholders management at different levels is very, very critical. And so so which we can use for collaboration. That I'm reading what you're saying. These are not my things. It's wonderful to read all of those. So you can use it for collaboration, and which is a very critical skill in this time. Yes, absolutely. Connection with people, especially using different forms of connection, is great. That's fantastic. So what I'm going to do with you, I love how you are contributing. I have created a board for you. This board is where this is something I know I want to do it a little bit more interactive, encourage from your speed of interaction, the quality of your input. So what I will do, I will share a link with you on a board that I have created for you. That link, please look at the chat screen and just click on the link that I'm going to share with you. And this is a link that on a board that I created. And let's leave something behind from this workshop together in the next maybe 10 minutes, very, very quickly. So let's see whether you can. So I can see you coming on the board. You will see, yeah, wonderful. So yeah, just come on the board. So you will see like post-its on the board. What I'm inviting you to do is actually, I want to share my screen at the same time. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, so can you, I think you should be able to see my screen. Lara, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can perfectly see your screen.
Okay, perfect. So what I invite you to do, like we will have like 1 minute for each time, is I will have a timer. So we'll start with self-leadership. Try to write on this board from this one-to-one and self-leadership, mainly one-to-one, but also a little bit self. What are the leadership skills from a relational context for a data scientist that are critical? Write it on the post-its that I've already created for you to save time. So you already mentioned like things like communication or other things. I'm curious to have all of your contributions. Start writing on it. I started the timer. It's 1 minute. So I can see you working like a beehive. Wonderful. Yeah. Whoa, it's so fast. Beautiful. So I'm reading resilience, creativity, reflection, patience, discipline, communication, ideation, continuous learning, negotiation, pragmatism, empathy, time management. Wonderful. So last 10 seconds. Yeah, I think this is great. Yeah. So the time is up. I think you can contribute forever. I think I see like teaching, developing patience, creativity, as you are seeing on the board, discipline, empathy. I think one of the ways that we coin at the one-to-one level, at the self-leadership level, all the things that you have created under a bundle of skills, which we call coaching. So I recommend you as data scientists, which involves the communication, reflection, patience, discipline, empathy, pragmatism, so lots of things you've created, and interpersonal communication. It's a wonderful bundle of that. So I strongly encourage you at the one-to-one level, having the coaching mindset, having the coaching skills to use at all levels of your one-to-one communication. As a data scientist, we teach this in our program, we practice this in our program, and it becomes almost an ethos of how we communicate. even not one-to-one, even with ourselves, with a coaching mindset, how can you communicate with yourself? So that's great. So that's an outcome. I can see you now coming to the team leadership. Yeah, let's go on the team leadership. So when you engage with a group of people, with a team, what are the skills that you would envision that we would need? So I'm starting the timer. So yeah, situational intelligence, inspirational speaking, team motivation, again, empathy, yes, active listening, wonderful, which we could put on the other side. Conflict resolution, yes, yeah, finding, sacrificing for the team. Oh wow, yeah, sacrifice, giving from yourself, and knowledge sharing, I can see it coming. And yeah, trust, absolutely. I think we could put trust also on the other side again as a common value. Strong overview of available skills, so understanding the capacity, recognizing talent management, emotional intelligence, negotiation, patience. So yeah, wonderful. So yeah, it's the end of 1 minute. Absolutely, I think we have great input from you. I think what we do in the team level is we take our coaching mindset to the team level. When we engage with teams, we need an approach which gives us just a little bit structure, but also enough room for creativity and emergence. So we can coin it as a group way of coaching, but another way of putting that is facilitation. So if you want to do well in data science and work with groups, definitely on a virtual or physical sense, I strongly encourage you to work on your facilitation skills. So the facilitation skills is the ways to bring the voice of your team, to get their input, but also produce something together in different settings. All right. So let's go on to organization leadership. So organization is much abstract construct. So what are the skills that we need to engage with the greater organization, with a company, with a firm, either as a freelancer, as a consultant, or a data scientist working in the organization? So I'm curious about your ideas. You've been doing great so far. Yeah. Let's see. So let's go to the organization leadership side. Seeing the big picture, yes, strategic vision, work, kind of building the culture, creating confidence, again, patience, and then again, vision, putting a convincing argument for the organization, motivating, a greater organization, influencing, and getting people on the same page. Yes, understanding the needs of the organization, the requirements, understanding the links, the connections between different parts and different departments. Yes, I can see you. Yes, fantastic. And understanding the business acumen, right? Yeah, super cool. And let's see what else. Domain expertise, yes. So with the domain expertise, you will gain trust on your professional skills. Yes, these are great. So we coined all of these skills that you have just shared as being as a trusted advisor under the consultancy skills. Whether you are an internal person or an external person, engaging as an organizational consultant with a trusted advisor mindset is a very critical skill for data science, for all the reasons that you have shared in the beginning. And finally, so you want to take your word out to the community. You want to contribute to the community. This is the community leadership, which is I mean like the thought leadership, sharing with the practice. What are the skills you think you need as a data scientist? So let's start the timer again. So yeah, again, so you can do mentoring for young data scientists. For example, I can see that learning to have simplified communication, both in writing and verbal, yes, and having the drive to share knowledge, absolutely, absolutely, yeah. The community leadership is simply sharing knowledge, learning with the community, absolutely, and having transparency, so not keeping things for yourself, but again, it's a part of the sharing, yes, and yeah, different communication keeps coming up with from other inputs, and also actually, yeah, as a member of a community of practice, can you create frameworks? Can you create models to make people understand the complex issues? Absolutely, that's the thought leadership. Actually, that's the one version of thought leadership. Yes, I think. Yeah, I think we cover everything you have just said, simply under the thought leadership. So blog writing and producing videos and doing webinars and summits, sharing your knowledge, producing models, theories are all part of the community leadership. So in the last 1 minute I think I'd like to thank to you all before I summarize what we have covered from a leadership skills perspective. So with your collective support, what we have done, we have looked at leadership skills for data science from 4 levels of engaging into relationships. One is one-to-one and self. So the coaching mindset is very critical here. We encourage you. The second one is team group level. So facilitation is important. So we need to be good facilitators of groups. At the organization level, learning to be a trusted advisor, a consultant is important. So consulting skills becomes the paramount for the organizational leadership. And finally, for the community leadership, any thought leadership practices of writing, producing, and sharing knowledge is absolutely important. So I give it back to you, Lara, with this wonderful group.
Thank you, Alper. And I think it's excellent to get all your ideas from the audience. And I hope you also enjoyed working with this tool on Mural. Now, Alper, before we move on to the next session, I just want to take maybe 1 minute to ask you a question. I think together with the knowledge of the group, we have highlighted so many different skills that people see are necessary as a data scientist. But do you have any advice on how to kind of develop these skills? Don't you think it's maybe important, for example, how can we start applying them in our workplace or developing these leadership skills that are necessary?
Well, I think the best starting point is, and I think which will be a center point of your growth is first of all having the growth mindset. So take everything as a learning opportunity and take this growth mindset to build these new skills. And where I started in my career and practice is with the coaching. So I think when you start with coaching, I think then you can expand this coaching mindset and skills to broader settings like teams and organizations and even community. So I think this would be my starting point. Then I would start practicing the skills that I've learned on coaching with the groups, with organizations, with clients, in every possible occasion, and then define my next stage after that. So we have one of the models that we use with our data scientists is the GROW model of coaching. So that's a very simple open source model. So you can go and learn that, and you can use GROW model everywhere. So I think that would be my simplest starting point. Learn coaching, practice coaching, one-to-one, team, and organizations.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for making it so interactive. Everyone, if you do have specific questions to Alper, leave them in the Q&A, and maybe Alper, you can stay around a little bit and also answer
I will be happy
some
to answer them.
Wonderful, some of the questions in writing. So we'll be moving on to our second session of today, which is the day in the life of a data science student. So for this, I would like to welcome McAndrew Saad, who is one of our students in the Master of Data Science program, and he will be speaking about the choice of program, why he decided to study data science, and what is some of the advice he has for other students or prospective students. So thank you for joining and welcome, McAndrew.
Hi, Lara. Hi, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity.
So McAndrew, maybe you could just start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your background before you started your degree in data science.
Sure. So hi, everyone. I'm 26 years old, and I'm based in Beirut, Lebanon. This is where I was born and raised. Yeah, I did a computer science degree in a good university in my country, and then I applied for a data science master's with the LU. We will discuss that in a little bit, but I started my career working as a technical support at a software development company. And then after a while, I got promoted to the team supervisor. So I got a chance to work with the team and know how it feels to be a leader, since we were talking about it right now and how it feels to work in a team as well. And yeah, in November 2019, I decided to join ELU for my data science master's, and here we are today.
Thank you. So you clearly already had some work experience, also a background in computer science with your bachelor's degree, but how did you get inspired to study data science?
Yeah, sure. While I was working as a technical support, most of my work was working with people's data. We used to have inventory management systems, and all of our customers used to host their data on our servers. And we used to support their application. And part of my job as a supervisor was to work around the scripts that were being released on the client's databases, just optimization, making sure everything is working well, sometimes creating my own SQL scripts. So I had a lot of fair share with working with data. And I also used to gather reports from my team and used to make small, just tiny decisions on how to split the team on different tasks on different days when we had too much work on a certain day. I used to check my data and see where I have to allocate my team's efforts. So from that, I decided I like academics and I always dreamed of having a PhD. So I wanted to go for a master's, and data science was like the best option for me after doing some research. And for me, I think it's the hottest job of the century. So yeah, that's where I am.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear how you kind of realized you were already using a lot of data and maybe doing a bit of data science already before actually studying it. So there's, of course, a lot of pathways. I think, like you said, it's the hottest job, and therefore there's also a lot of different resources. Yesterday, we also talked a bit about how to choose a program or an institute. And for example, there's, of course, some institutes that are offering boot camps, so maybe shorter courses with a skills focus, practical focus. And then you have the universities, online or traditional universities that are offering degrees. So why did you make the decision to join a degree program rather than maybe a bootcamp?
I had an experience with a bootcamp where it was an Oracle Database Administrator bootcamp, and I found that, well, it was like a certification where I would get real certifications from Oracle, but I found that you don't actually need that unless you're really working with it. And my work was on SQL. And so I found that to be kind of useless, but just another point on my CV, But like I said, I love academics and I know how to be a good student. I know how to do my role and how to get things done in university, although this is not what it takes to become successful. But yeah, this is kind of a path that I've chosen. I want to go through academics. I will definitely get my PhD one day.
Great, and I think sometimes we definitely see that people join a bootcamp first. They kind of get a taste of data science, or maybe a taste of Python, for example, and then they're ready to make the commitment to a longer program. So I think that that makes sense and is a quite common experience. So when you were looking for different schools and different programs, what were some factors you were considering, or what were you paying attention to?
To be honest, there are a lot of like interesting programs in my country. There are as well some data science programs, but not the ones that I was looking for. So I started looking around Europe somewhere nice. I applied to a university in Germany, but it was taking too long for them to reply, and like the whole procedure took around 6, 7 months. And in that time, I already applied to 2 other universities. One of them is ELU, and they got the acceptance and so on. So I basically was looking somewhere outside of my country just to be able to, like, I like traveling, I like discovering new places. I don't mind going and living in a different country for a couple of years, do a master's, and like being exposed to a culture, to a new culture, and so on. So yeah, that's where my mindset was before all the COVID thing. And yeah, like we used to have plans of traveling. Now I think most of them are gone for the near future. So that's how it is.
Yeah, I think we're all waiting for the vaccine, or things to be, of course, a little bit less restricted, so that you can also come to the Netherlands. Now, you have chosen specifically to start your program with European Leadership University. Could you talk a little bit about your experience so far as a student? Some of the highlights maybe, or the learning experience?
Yeah, well, like for me personally, I really like the program because it doesn't follow traditional school techniques or university techniques that we all know. You get the course, you study, do an exam. So that's the thing that I really like about the program, is that it's really practical. All you do is courses and projects, and most of the work has to be done by yourself. So it teaches you like a lot to be responsible and to heavily rely on yourself when you want to get something accomplished. For example, on my first project, I actually spent like maybe a couple of days researching. I didn't know what I wanted to do because there was so much that needed to be done on a personal level, and I wasn't used to that. So it kind of took me a couple of days to realize where I was and what I had to do, and like how can I get it done in time and so on. So this is part of my experience with online learning, with the program that the LU offers, like how unique it is, how practical it is. And on another level, it's also a part-time program, so I can like have a work life on the side, and also be able to catch my and stay up to date on my courses and everything. So yeah, this is a quick recap of my time with the LU.
Thanks. And it sounds like just being a kind of student who has to manage their time wisely, you are already definitely needing to apply some of the leadership skills that came up in the first session as well.
Yeah.
So how do you think specifically this master, or getting a master in data science, will prepare you for your future?
Well, like I said, education is not all what it takes to become successful. So there's a lot more to be done. As a data scientist, the more like you dive into the field, the more stuff that you find that you need to learn. So like for me to become a data scientist, it's not, I won't become a data scientist after I finish my master's. It's gonna take me a little while more. Maybe I need to take a few courses that would complement my studies, and then have a little bit of experience in an enterprise or somewhere where they work purely in data science. And then like you need a lot of practical work, a lot of experience just to be able to become like a really good data scientist. So it takes a lot of effort, takes a lot of patience, and yeah, I'm going for it personally. It's just like a subtle time for everyone, and like all our plans are on hold for now. So yeah, I'm kind of currently working as, I just started a new job a couple of weeks ago as a software development consultant in a company. Like the unemployment rate in my country is around 50%. So although I'm not working as a data scientist right now, but I will definitely be looking for a data science job really soon. So that's kind of what's going in my mind.
Yeah, I personally know all the efforts that you put into each of your projects, at least within the university. So ELU has a skills focus in their program. What are some of the skills you have picked up since you started studying data science? Maybe both some of the technical skills, but also some of the soft skills or leadership skills.
Yeah, definitely. To talk on a leadership perspective or like on a team perspective, I picked a lot of skills in collaboration and communication, and basically in coaching as well. But I always have been a good team player, but I picked like really small details when you work with a team and how to organize yourself, especially when I had my experience in group projects and we were all like, each and every one of us was in a different continent. So it was kind of tough to collaborate between each other and communicate and get the work on time done, as well as respecting like I had a job, another guy had a job, respecting each other's time as well. So yeah, it was kind of tough on that level, but it taught me a lot. It kind of gave me those extra things that I needed in that on that level. On a technical level, I would say that everything I know on the data science field I acquired through my 10 month of being an ELU student, maybe 11 months now. So yeah, I'm grateful and I feel like I accomplished a lot and I gathered a lot of knowledge and education that I need to be able to be successful in the near future.
Great. So you already talked a little bit about some of your dreams for the future. What are currently your career plans in terms of your data science practice, and what are some of your future hopes as well?
Yeah, personally, to be honest, I'm trying to leave the country, go somewhere like around Europe or maybe Canada. I have a lot of relatives there. I know in Canada you can find a lot of data science job. I know as well in Europe, like it's becoming a thing where you have all those big data centers with like now they are creating data science companies which never existed before. So yeah, I'm kind of optimistic about the future, but like at the moment, I'm kind of just working on my personal skills until like the time comes and things get better. I will definitely like go for it.
And you said that before you joined the program, you thought that data science was the hardest job of the century. Is that still something you think?
Yeah, the more I dive into it, the more I find it like the most important thing in the future, because for me, I think like even in a grocery store, you can have data science and like make something out of it. If you just gather the guy's data and forecast their sales for next year, that would do him good. Even like if you're planting some seeds, I don't know, if you're planting some tomatoes, like just as simple as that, you can somehow use data science to predict something. So I think it's really important. The more people realize the importance of data science, the more it's going to become really crucial in our lives, like engineers, like doctors, that will like become even more interesting. So yeah, I'm looking forward. I'm really optimistic, and I really think that if you become a really successful data scientist, success is inevitable, because it's really a good place to be in if you are a data scientist right now.
Yeah, I definitely share your optimism and your dreams. So we just have a few minutes left, and if anyone in the audience has any question for McAndrew, please let us know through the Q&A or the chat. Maybe as just a final question or two, I'm wondering, is there anything that has surprised you since you really started to learn more and practice data science? Is there something you maybe thought before or that has surprised you about the field?
Yeah, something like kind of ringed in my head when you said something about surprised you, and like When I was in my bachelor's doing computer science, I think maybe my first year, I was in a programming course, and there was this doctor that was telling us in the computer science field, if you want to become successful, you have to do a lot on your own. She was saying that one time she got a Java project and she really needed the money, but she didn't know Java. So she spent a month learning Java because she knows like other programming languages, and she got the project done. So, and I kind of realized how important her speech was in my data science masters, when I found that like to really become successful, I have to do a lot on my own, and I have to like always be an initiator. If I research something and I found that's going to be interesting the next couple of years, or there's an emerging technology right now, go learn it, that will do you good in the near future. So there's a lot to do on your own, and I really advise everyone in the field, like if you want to become successful, you cannot just stick to one technology or one thing that you know. You always have to improve your skill set and add other tools to your tool belt. So yeah, I
Perfect.
hope
Well,
this
that has kind of brought me to my final question. You already shared one piece of advice, but to someone who is thinking about studying data science or is applying to different data science programs, what would be a piece of advice you would like to give them?
Yeah, well, I would like to, like, the only piece of advice that I would give is to know exactly what you want. I think non-technical people, or yeah, non-technical people confuse, or people outside of the data science field confuse the term data science. They confuse it with data engineering and data analytics and some other like really big terms like that. I would advise them, do your research, know exactly what you want. Like there are certain things that you need to be good at in order to be successful as a data scientist. So yeah, just do your research, do your homework, and like know exactly what you want. I had a motive behind my choice and I followed it. So yeah, I advise everyone to do the same.
Thank you so much, McAndrew. Thank you for sharing your time with us today and your experience. Perhaps if you can, you're free to stick around as well. Maybe some people will have some questions through the chat, but thank you again for making the time, and I'll pass it on to Robert, who will be introducing our next speaker.
Yes,
Thanks a lot.
McAndrew, can I ask you another question, a final question?
Yes, sure, go ahead, sir.
We're still there. Thank you thanks for your story and to hear about your experience. You have chosen to learn like in an online program, right, or a remote program. Is this something that you want to do with your work as well? Because you see like an increasing demand for remote work. Is this something you consider, and do you think like an online learning program will help you with working remotely?
Okay, I have two answers to that question. First answer, I initially wanted a program where, like, initially we had to travel at the end of ALU's program to Amsterdam. We had like some workshops that they prepared and some job fairs and so on. But due to the COVID thing, we didn't get the chance to do it. So if I knew before that it was all gonna be online, maybe I would have changed my mind, because I like to meet people, I like to intervene, I have a lot of communication with others working in a team. But the second answer to my question is that in my previous experience as a support technician and a support supervisor, all of my work was remote because we had an office here in Lebanon and the company and all customers were in the United States. So all of our work was remote. And I'm currently working as a software development consultant, but we work on international contracts for international organizations like UNICEF and so on. So all of my work is actually remote.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much again. Stay around if you want.
I will.
We are going to the next speaker with the next talk from Robbe Sneyders. Maybe you can already turn on your camera. Yeah, there you are.
Yes.
Robbe is head of delivery at a machine learning consultancy firm and also a machine learning engineer. Your company is headquartered in Belgium, and well, you're going to tell actually how it is like working at a machine learning consultancy firm. Can you maybe tell us in like 1 minute a bit more about your background and then start well, your presentation or your talk?
Right, perfect. Thanks, Robert. So yeah, I'll already quickly share my screen since I have an introduction slide there as well, which is a bit easier. So yeah, I'm the head of delivery at ML6. And before this, I worked as a machine learning engineer as a team lead. So I have more than 3 years of experience as a machine learning engineer as well. And now I'm responsible for the delivery of all of our projects and for the coaching of our full technical team. So everyone who works on a project, I work together with them. And like you said, today, indeed, I will be talking about what is it like to work at ML6 at a machine learning consultancy firm. So maybe a quick overview. I'll quickly give some info on ML6 as some context. We call ourselves a machine learning services company, so I'll talk about what that means. Then also about why we have machine learning engineers and not some other roles. And then finally, we'll look at our internal structure, which is composed of squads and chapters. And then finally, I hope to keep some time for the Q&A. So if you have any questions during the talk, make sure to submit them and then we can discuss them afterwards. So ML6 is, like I said, a machine learning services company. And our vision is to accelerate intelligence, both internally for our people and externally for our clients. So how do we do this? We do this with more than 70 machine learning experts and 5 offices. So our headquarters is in Belgium, but we also have offices in the Netherlands, UK, and Germany. And especially in the Netherlands, we are growing quite fast. Also in Belgium, we've been the largest and fastest growing AI company for the past 3 years, as declared by Deloitte's Fast 50. Also important to know is that we are a premier partner for Google Cloud with a machine learning specialization. So what this means is that we build our solutions on Google Cloud. And whenever a client of Google needs a machine learning solution, then Google will involve us and check if we can help that client. 15% of our workforce is also dedicated to applied research. And this is not 15% of the people, but 15% of the time of everyone, which is a very big distinction, which we will talk about more later. And we contribute to open source. So we contribute to some tools. A bit special is that we do not have a focus on one machine learning domain, but a machine learning project. So as long as there's an interesting problem for us to solve, which requires a real custom solution, that will do it. But it's mainly in these 4 domains, which is NLP, computer vision, time series, and recommender systems, which are mostly about ranking and matching. So if you look at our clients, we are in production at more than 100 customers across different industries. So you can see some of their logos here. And we're active in life sciences and healthcare, in the public sector, in financial services, in communication, and much more. So that was a short introduction. So what does it mean when I say we're a machine learning services company? To explain this, let's first look at the other type of company, which is a product company. So a product company is a company that builds its own product or product suite and sells this to its clients. So every team in the company works on this product or on this suite of products. And one very nice example of a product company in machine learning is, for instance, Google. Compare this to a service company. We don't build our own product, but we sell our services to our clients to help them build their products. So this has some advantages. You have a lot of different use cases and a lot of different companies and sectors like I showed before. And since we have a lot of different projects, there's a lot of opportunity to take ownership and responsibility and really grow very rapidly. Now, of course, there's also a downside. Since there's a lot of different projects, a lot of service companies have a problem that their teams get disconnected. But that's why at ML6 we focus a lot on the central core that keeps us together as well. So to give some examples, we do not work at a client like some other consultancy firms. We always work from our own offices, or currently, of course, mostly from home. But this is very important to us because it enables cross-project knowledge sharing. Since we're always together at the same office, you see other people, you talk to them, you learn from them. And it's just a very good way to keep a very wide knowledge. We also spend a lot of time on our own applied research and internal tooling that can be reused across projects. And then finally, we have a big focus on people support. It's very important to us that our people work on projects that they like, that they are challenged, that they can grow. And since we're a service company, our people are really the most important part of the company. But before looking more at the center, let's have a quick look at our projects. So there are 3 types of projects that we do. The first one is a proof of concept. So this is the first project we do at a new client. And the goal here is to assess the technical feasibility of a solution and to demonstrate that we can add value with intelligent technology for a problem that the client has. So this is mostly, a bit more researchy. It's trying to check what can be done with their data, which kind of models can we apply, and what are the results. But these projects are quite small as well. The goal is to, as quickly as possible, prove that we can help them solve a problem. So the next step then is, once we've proven this, is an MVP, where we try to put this model in an application, so really an end-to-end solution. And the goal here is to assess if the model we build can also perform in a real-life situation. So on real-life data, which is sometimes changing compared to a fixed data set. Sometimes we do a proof of concept on individual frames, while we actually need to work on video in the end product. So that is a step we take here. And then the final part is a project putting machine learning into production. So this is the goal where we always want to get. Here we set up a solution that can be fully integrated with the client systems. It is completely automated. It retrains the model automatically, and it is fully scalable. If there's a lot more traffic coming to our application, then it should be able to handle that. And the most important part here is that this is the place where we create real value. So we provide very useful insights in the proof of concept and the MVP, but only when we really put machine learning into production at a client, it will start generating value for them and their users or their own clients. So it's very clear that this is an iterative approach, which is very important to us. So we will not design the end solution from the start and then start building separate components. What we do is we start small, we build something that we get insights from, and then we check how can we improve this, how can we make it bigger, and that's how we keep going until we have a real end-to-end solution that solves their problem. Now, if we look at our teams working on these projects, these are the 4 main roles that we have. So we have machine learning engineers, software engineers, data engineers, and project managers. But we do not have data scientists, data analysts, business analysts, or any other role which is related to data science. And this is with a reason. So why do we only have machine learning engineers? I think this quote from Google summarizes it very well. So the real challenge is not building the machine learning model. The challenge is building an integrated machine learning system and to continuously operate it in production. So this is, or ties back to what I said earlier, that we only start generating value when we put something in production. And this is really the end goal for everything. So we need the skills to get there. Also, if you look at one of these real-world machine learning systems, you will see that only a very small fraction is actual machine learning code. So developing the model is only a small part of the tasks. There is a lot of work with data. You need to serve your models. You need to have analysis of your results to keep up with data shift and so on. But the nice thing is, this is still all very much related to machine learning. So you might not be coding a TensorFlow model all the time, but even the serving is machine learning specific. It has additional challenges that you don't have with traditional software. The same for your model analysis. How do you know when a model is good enough to deploy or not? It's often not easy to define good metrics because the real world data is very fuzzy. It can be very subjective. So the machine learning challenges here are just a lot wider than only developing the model. Also, if we look at these different stages, you will see that we need a lot of different skills. So in a proof of concept, it's mostly about business analysis, data exploration, and trying to fit your first models on the data, evaluate how well they work. In the MVP, it's more about the data engineering, about serving your model, setting up APIs, really do the software engineering. And then when going into production, additional skills are needed about systems design, automation, scaling, and monitoring. So really that systems design is an important one. You need to be able to think about machine learning on a systems level. And a short example that shows this is one of our use cases, which I can showcase. So the goal here for the client was to auto-produce football game video footage. So the only thing we received was this wide-angled video footage from a soccer match, and they wanted to make something that was fun to watch at. Like I can tell you, if you have to watch 90 minutes of this, it's not very interesting. But let's see what happens when we turn on our solution. You can see that the camera starts following the ball and the action on the field. How we do this is via object detection. So we detect the different players from different teams and the ball. And you can see that we also can display this on a minimap and gather statistics. So this is not an easy task. Just a very high-level summarization is that we have event detection going on both on sound and video. So we detect goals, fouls, the start of a game. For the detection of the players and the ball, we do object detection and then team classification. You also need to know which team is which, to know who scored, who made a foul, and so on. You can see that the camera is very wide-angled, and this differs between different football fields. They're not always set up exactly the same. So we also need a model to de-warp the field into a normal 2D plane. And then you need to connect the output of all these models together to generate statistics, the auto production, and the minimap, and so on. So this just shows that you need to be able to think about machine learning on a very high level as well to build this kind of solution. So to summarize, what a machine learning engineer, which skills they need is, first of all, machine learning related. It's about data, about models. It's software development, and it's ops. It's about deployment, about systems. So we really need people that can combine all these skills. And if that didn't sound like enough yet, we are also a services company. So everyone works together with clients directly. So yeah, we also need people who have communication skills, business understanding, problem solving skills, and who can make trade-offs. If there's a limited scope, time-wise or budget-wise from the client, then we need to be able to take decisions. What will we build that will solve this problem as quickly as possible within the budget? Where can we take shortcuts and still get the best results that we can?
Thank you very much, Robbe. Sorry, are you ready? I thought you were ready. Excuse me.
Sorry. Not yet. I have a very short additional part. So, of course, not everyone can do everything. So we are mostly looking for T-shaped profiles, people that are both generalist and have deep expertise at the same time. So I'll quickly go over this so you can see people at ML6 have one expertise but know a lot about all the other machine learning stuff as well. So we have computer vision experts, experts in productionizing, but they always know general things about the other domains as well. So just quickly about how we support this is with our internal structures. So we work in squads and chapters. So everyone who delivers a project is part of a squad, which is a self-steering multidisciplinary team. So it contains all the roles I showed before, and they deliver their own projects end to end. They're responsible for their own planning and delivery, and they're coached by a squad lead. But so this way we group the different small projects from different small teams for the different projects, and we add them to a bit of a bigger team from 8 to 12 people. We also have the chapters who are cross-squad, and these are expert teams focused on one domain. So for instance, natural language processing, and they do applied research, they build internal tooling to use on our projects, they generate blog posts and videos, and they support our project delivery. If we need an NLP expert on a project and the people on the project are not comfortable enough with the domain, then they can reach out to the chapter for support. And then finally, they share their knowledge 4 times a year in a chapter conference, which is internal. And here they give an overview of what they did, the research they did, the state of the art in their domain, what we did on projects in their domain. And while you cannot stay up to date about all the machine learning domains yourself, this way we can stay up to date about them together. All right, that was it, Robert.
Yes, thank you, Robbe. Thank you very much for your interesting talk. The last few minutes, the connection was a bit noisy. Well, here it was. I'm not sure how it was for the other attendees, but we could hear you. I could hear anything you said, so that's good. So I do have a question for you. Maybe it's something with your speaker or microphone. I'm not sure. But Bert is asking you, what is the most important skill if a junior data engineer applies for a job at ML6?
That's a very good question, and I think it is problem solving. So we want people that can find ways to solve problems themselves, that can work independently while we provide them the support that they need to really achieve their best results. But we do not have strong requirements on experience. We have people coming in that have never coded, for instance, in TensorFlow, which is the tool we use mostly to develop our models. As long as we know that they can solve problems and they have a very strong scientific background, that's the most important part for us.
Okay, thank you. I have another question. Do people have like enough machine learning skills when they graduate from like a data science university program?
It has improved a lot. So when I started at ML6 almost 4 years ago, there almost were no real courses for machine learning and artificial intelligence. So it has matured a lot. So now we see people with a lot more experience coming in. But I still think that you will learn the most once you start working. So you most of all need to have a very strong basis in mathematics and science. So you can handle any new problem that comes up, so you can handle any new techniques that are developed. I think that's still where you learn the most.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you again, Robbe. We are going over to your colleague, Jason Lee. I hope he's online. You can already turn on your camera, if so.
Yes. Hello, Jason.
Hi, I think I hear you. Jason Lee is a machine learning engineer at ML6, and he will tell you why you should choose data science as a career. Hi, there you are. Maybe you can start with a really small introduction or tell a bit about your background in like 1 minute.
Yes, all right. Let me quickly share my screen first. I prepared slides as well. All right, I guess you can see my screen now.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so today I will talk about why I choose data science as a career. And as you asked, of course, first I will introduce myself. So my name is Jason Lee, and I'm originally from China, and I actually did my master in Belgium at KU Leuven for 2 years in computer science. So I did my study there, and then I wanted to working in Amsterdam, I was looking for a data science job. So I landed here in Amsterdam at MSX. And now, yeah, my daily work is doing machine learning stuff, and I really enjoy it. And so today I will tell you a bit what I do and what we do as data scientists. So yeah, but I'm not going to emphasize the difference between data science, data engineer, and machine learning engineer. Instead, I will just give an overview of data science and what can you expect if you do data science as your job. So to start with, we want to answer this question, why choose data science as a career? So I think the answer is simple, because data scientist is the sexiest job of the 21st century. And why is that? Because just like described here, data scientists, they can both manipulate large and unstructured data sources and create insights from them. Data scientists are difficult to hire and retrain, but their skills will be necessary to any organization wishing to profit from big data. So as you might notice already, nowadays we are doing a lot of cool stuff. There are a lot of advanced technologies leveraged by big data, and these are actually really exciting. Yeah, they could be also very challenging, but they are really cool topics. And yeah, doing this kind of job is very challenging, but very interesting meanwhile. So when you get a data science job, so actually different people think in different ways. So the society thinks you're building some cool robots, and indeed they are robotics, and we do some, for example, reinforcement learning for robotics. Yeah, we do control robots, but we are not on a Terminator level yet, and we won't see next Skynet in a few years. So that's not a big issue now. And what your friend will think is probably that they think you are really a geek, you know a lot of mathematics. So you think you are a genius doing all this kind of hard to understand stuff. But actually, yes, you do need some math fundamentals, such as calculus, linear algebra, or probabilities, statistics. But I think you don't have to be on a master level. You do need to know the reasons behind the theories behind, but you don't have to master mathematics if you want to be a data scientist. And your boss would think, yeah, they would think you can do all these magics, you can make these rabbits coming out of nowhere. And indeed, with our fancy technologies, we can create a lot of magics nowadays using AI. But actually, for mathematicians, they know us better than the others. They know these are actually very cute. We don't need very strong fundamentals in mathematics, but we are achieving a lot of, we are doing a lot of fancy stuff. And so it's very interesting. And what I think I do, I'm not necessarily seeing the world as a Superman, but I think we are using data science technologies. We are indeed creating a lot of impacts, and we are creating a lot of values. So we are definitely doing a lot of valuable things. And yes, how do we do these valuable things? Is that we need to go to GitHub and Stack Overflow when we get stuck. And this kind of website can always solve a lot of problems, but still you need to have the knowledge in your head. So yeah, moving on, we still want to answer this question, why data science is charming. This is important. And for myself, my answer would be because it solves some problems that we were not able to solve using traditional techniques. So what kind of problems was that difficult for us? So let's take natural language processing as an example. So natural language processing basically wants the computers to understand natural languages and make actions according to natural languages. So as an example, let's say we have this sentence, why choose data science as a career? And now we want to ask the computers, instead of asking humans, we ask the computer. So how can a computer program verify if this is a valid sentence? Valid means, does it make any sense? Is it correct? Is it grammatically correct? And so we are going to, yeah, if we think about this, I hope not everyone here are deep learning experts, so that we don't have to jump into deep learning already. We will start simple from a brief history of language models. So actually from last centuries, between 1950 and 1990, so people were already thinking about this question. So they were already using computers, and they already want the computers to be more intelligent, to be more smart, to be able to understand human languages. So their approaches was mostly rule-based models. So what is rule-based models? So basically rule-based models, you really want to create a program that can analyze the sentences, can split it into different terms, different literals, and to really, for example, build a parse tree to really understand the structure of this sentence. And then you can validate it. You can validate if it's a valid sentence. But actually, yeah, so actually they were doing a lot of techniques such as grammatical analysis, syntactic analysis, semantic analysis. These were all needed, and these were implemented based on rule-based systems. But actually, there weren't too many breakthroughs used in this direction because there were certain difficulties. For example, in order to cover 20% of real-world sentences, you need more than 10,000 rules. And actually, there are also conflicts exist between rules. So more rules are needed if you, depending on the context of the sentences. So that made it more and more complicated. So people didn't really, people didn't make a lot of achievement on this path. So some people were thinking, okay, maybe we were doing it wrong. There could be other solutions. So people were thinking about, okay, what if we don't analyze the rules of the sentences? Instead, we can simply calculate the probabilities of seeing these sentences. So as an example, if we have the sentence, the cat sat on the mat, we can tell, okay, 95% this is a valid sentence because we've seen it in a book, we've seen it in many places. So probably this is something being spoken by human. So we can say, okay, this could be a grammatically correct sentence. And so we can, so basically the objectives becomes that we want to calculate the probability of seeing this sentence, why choose data science as a career. And we can do a bit more math, not as much as mathematicians, just on data scientist levels. So we just, if we want to get this probability, you can first calculate the probabilities of seeing y, and then you multiply it with the probabilities of seeing truth after y, and then you multiply with the probability of seeing data after y truth. And you do a lot of these multiplications, and at the end you will get this probability. You can even make it simpler by just getting the probabilities of adjacent word pairs. So you don't look at the whole sentence every time. So it makes it way simpler. You can easily calculate these probabilities by counting the word pairs in the corpus. So what is a corpus? A corpus is a large text data set. Basically, it can be like a Wikipedia. So there's a lot of valid sentences that you can learn from. So people were switching to this approach, and they actually beat most of the rule-based learning approaches. So they started to realize maybe we don't need to understand what's behind natural language, but instead we can look at the probabilities, we look at statistics, we look how frequent it can happen, we just imitate how humans speak. So this became the new direction until now. So from 2012 till now, as you know, there's deep learning coming up. So what is deep learning? I can say it's machine learning methods based on neural networks and big data. So basically, it wasn't something new. Neural networks was already proposed a long time ago, but recently, because we have more computation powers, because we have more GPUs, so with this development, we can really gather more data and use more data to train our neural networks. So basically, we can train complex end-to-end neural network models to fit the data distribution. But still, don't forget, we are still solving the probability problem. Deep learning is just an approach to fit your model to the data distribution. So it's actually still based on the statistics. So after all this development with deep learning, we have a lot of cool applications nowadays, such as machine translation, sentiment analysis, chatbot, text generation, you name it. These are even just the NLP applications, and they are more with computer vision or other domains as well. So yeah, these are really cool. So if you are doing data science job, you might be involved in developing these applications. And yeah, I guess it's really, at least it's very charming for me. That's one of the biggest reasons why I choose to do this. It's also very challenging at the same time. And then we come back to this question again and again and again. So now I'm thinking, okay, maybe I don't have to answer this myself, since we have smart computer programs nowadays, and we can ask them to answer this question. So I asked GPT-2, why choose data science as a career? So he answers, so data science is about using data to help solve problems. And in today's world, the best job is often in the data science field. As a career, data scientists are more likely to be paid better than those in other industries, and they have more opportunities to advance their careers. And it's actually very interesting that it gives this answer, because this answer is based on the probability, based on the statistics, and based on the language, based on the sentences that people really speak every day. So it kind of rivals the general idea of human of ourselves. Yes, and it's more honest than me, because I didn't want to cover the money topic. Like indeed, sometimes you, as GPT-2 said, you might get better paid. So that's also a good thing. But money doesn't come out of nowhere. There is a reason you can get a lot of profit, because by applying data science, you can really solve complex problems, and you can really create a lot of values. And hence, there's a high demand in the job market for data scientists or data engineer, machine learning engineer as well. And if you look at the AI industries, there are way too many companies doing this nowadays. So it's not, so actually, I think AI industries is not like a specific companies doing some AI research. Instead, it's more like a general technology that can be applied to everywhere in any domains. So for example, logic, compliance, customer management, finance, security, industrial, manufacturing, whatever. All these companies, they can leverage their business, they can gain more profits by applying data science. So it's becoming more and more useful. It's not only about specific techniques that you do some research in a specific field. So what actually is data science job? Why it's different with traditional software developers? So for traditional software development, what you do is you can develop really cool applications on your laptop or on your phone. It can be really fancy, and you can also build, for example, websites, shopping online, whatever. But all these programs, they are implementing a certain logics that you predefined. So basically, they can expect certain inputs, and they are just sophisticated logic systems. At the end, they will get the input and give you the expected output, and that should work correctly because the logic should be correct. And then you can do these functions basically. But for a data science developer, what you do is, I would say, you are trying to make computers smart. You are trying to make computers solving some problems that human can solve. For example, if you can detect cars and pedestrians on the road, on the street, so you can probably build auto-driving cars. So, and also you can analyze the voice and do some voice recognition, and then you can have something like Siri on your phone. So these are all, they are trying to make computers, trying to make them understand human and do some human jobs. It's more than logics that we define, and they do these human jobs based on the statistical models that we built, which is neural networks for deep learning. And more specifically, if you do data science job, you can either be a researcher or an engineer. So researcher, you're really doing some research, you modify these model architectures, you're trying to push the accuracy or performance to a new level. You're doing something that nobody has ever done. And that's cool, but yeah, it's quite difficult. And also you can choose to be an engineer. Engineer solves actual problems in the real world. So basically, you get the data, and you can choose your model, and you try to fit the data with your model. You try to find the best model to solve these actual problems and create values. And what we do at ML6, I hope already mentioned, so we are a consultancy company, so we work for our customers. So our customers, normally they throw us their raw data, and they also throw us a bunch of questions, and they want to solve some questions, or they want to get more values from their raw data. And so what we can do is, first, we can analyze and transform this data. If it's big data, we can also use some cloud platforms such as Dataflow, to process big data. For small data, small data, you can just do it locally or whatever you like. And then you get the dataset. So dataset is more like structured data that you can further analyze or train your machine learning models on top of it. So then what we can do as a machine learning engineer, we can pre-process the data, choose ML models, and we can fine-tune the hyperparameters. So basically, we want to find the best match, the best matching model, and try to fine-tune the model to fit this data set to make it working well. And we get the ML models. And at the end, when you have the model working, you can optimize it. For example, you can use TensorRT or some nowadays fancy technologies to prune the model, to optimize it, to make it smaller, to make it faster. And then you can deploy it. Normally, you can deploy it on the cloud, or also you can just send the program, and as long as it's working correctly, then you are good. Then you will have happy customers normally. And actually, you might already notice I have different colors here. So because we have two different roles, so data engineer, they try to solve they try to analyze and transform the data, and they can also take care of the deployment of the models. But for ML engineers, we really focus on the model. We really tune the model and to study the models and to fit the data into the model. We build the model. But actually at ML6, we sometimes as ML6 agent, we need to do all of these steps because machine learning is not only about processing data or training the model. You should consider it as a whole process. You should be familiar with all these steps to be successful in your projects. And that's it. Hope it wasn't too long. If you have any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Right in time. Thank you very much. I think you gave the attendees great insights in what it's like to be a machine learning engineer. Very interesting to hear about this. Let's see, we do have a question from one of the attendees, which is someone has professional experience for 6 years in Java and is currently doing a master in data science. Do you think that this experience with Java counts when you're applying for a job as a machine learning engineer or maybe as a data engineer?
Yes, I think it's definitely helpful. I mean, if you want to be a data engineer or machine learning engineer, right? You first need to be an engineer. So I think you really need to know how to program, and you better know how does the system work, and you should know this simple these basic components instead of just knowing how to use TensorFlow or Pandas or NumPy. I think good foundations are very important. Maybe you feel like you are in lack of some data science knowledge, but I think you can easily learn them. And then with these firm foundations on these programmings, I think you can really get a good position, or you can really do it well, I believe.
There's definitely a benefit. Do you also hire graduates? Or do you prefer people, or do you hire more people which already have work experience?
We have a lot of graduates. I was a graduate 1 year ago, so yes. So we are really we have young team, and we are really passionate. I would say people here, all my colleagues, we are really fans of technologies. We are enthusiastic. If you are enthusiastic, of course you can get a similar job, or you will enjoy working as a data scientist.
Okay, thank you, Jason Lee. Thank you very much. We are going to the next presentation. Stay around if you want.
Thanks a lot for inviting. And
yes, of course, you're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Casper Hoppe. If you are online, please turn on your camera. Casper actually is a high-end IT recruiter, and he is focusing on machine learning, deep learning, and computer vision roles. We will handle some of his questions at the end of his presentation, but also during the way, because he's going to fill the whole next hour. Casper, are you there already?
Yes, can you guys hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you and we can see you. So you're right on time. Thank you very much. Can you start with like a brief introduction about yourself?
I'll be as brief as I can, but I'm going to start with two. So help me with 2 questions, please. Are you okay, Robert? Can I start?
Yeah, sure. The sound was away for like 2 seconds, but now we can hear you.
Okay, I hope it stays stable. I'm going to start with 2 questions, and I'm going to invite the people who attend this webinar to type their answers in the chat, right? And I'm going to start with 2 questions. One is a bit of a joke, and the other one is slightly more serious. They're both jokes. What is the most important criteria to join ML6? That's question 1. And question 2 is, which industry or sector do you think you can get an easiest way job as a data scientist in the Netherlands? So those 2 questions. Question 1, what's the criterion? Bit of a joke for ML6. And what's the best industry or sector to easily get a job in the Netherlands in data science? Can you start typing in the chat? Can I see some more answers, please? What's the joining criterion for ML6, the best one? And what's the sector or industry that you can easily find a job in data science in the Netherlands? Great. Being James Bond, excellent. Okay, I'll start going through the answers. I think great hair is a joining criterion for ML6. Guys, you also had great hair, fantastic. That was the joke, of course, but now the sector to easily get a data science job in the Netherlands is in banking, banking systems, core banking systems, new banks, banking, financial sector. So I can truly recommend people to have a good look around there. That's the industry that recruits best, and that's where you have a good chance to get a job in data science easily. Anyways, I'm going to shift to my presentation. I've got quite a few slides. I've got 3 sections to my presentation. Bit of an introduction. I'll tell a bit about myself. I'm going to talk about qualities of a good resume. Then we'll have a little break with some questions. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about doing a good job interview. Then we'll have another break with some questions. And then lastly, I'm going to talk about landing the job. You know, what you have to do at the end, and some negotiation topics will be discussed as well. But first I'll start introducing myself properly. Just a second. Share screen. That was my opening question. Just a second, please. I want to see if it shifts to the next page. Yes, that's great. Okay, good. As you heard in the introduction, I run an agency, a headhunt agency, been around for a couple of years. I specialize in supplying resources to AI engineers to R&D departments, specialized in deep learning, machine learning, computer vision, data science, data engineering, advanced analytics. And I've got a few presences across Europe. I've got a good presence in the Netherlands, in France, learning a lot about Germany at the moment as well. And my footprint in the Netherlands out of the agency came with starting the autonomous driving unit and HD mapping unit for a large company in autonomous driving in Amsterdam, also based in Eindhoven. I started that group with a couple of key people that came out of VR. Now, the other sectors that I work in successfully, besides autonomous driving, where I work with many companies now, is in medtech, in financial services, and also in AI for customer service. So I want to point out what's happening, what are the kind of players if as a job seeker you're trying to find a job as a data scientist. It's quite a world out there, as you probably know. There's quite a few players. Now, I position myself as a headhunter, and that is an external role to a potential employer. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you see the parties involved with hiring within the company, like an internal recruiter and the hiring manager. There are usually also external parties included in some of the search and supplying and completing job offers, of which I'm the headhunter. I do that based, and the arrow is a little bit the wrong way around, I do that based on a request from a hiring manager. So a hiring manager asks me, listen, I have this vacancy, we need some support in getting the right resources or suggestions, can you help us supply those? Then I start looking around, of course, first of all in my own database, but I also start searching custom some candidates to start supplying shortlists. And if I'm lucky, I get interviews out of those shortlists. So what is a headhunter, and why would a company use a headhunter? Well, in many cases, a CTO is very specific about what he or she wants, but he has other things to do, and he can't get it done. And on top of that, when he tries to deal, or she does to deal with internal recruiters, they realize that they need specialized services. They need people who are in the market for a while, because internal recruiters, fantastic people, but they have to shift their role many times. So just when they're getting ready, just when they're starting to understand data science, they're asked to rotate to, for example, internally start recruiting for finance specialists. So that's the difference between an internal recruiter and a headhunter. A headhunter is able to specialize completely on a certain area and react to a demand on a specialized request. So we work together with the hiring manager. And that means that we have direct access to the source of information on what's needed. You know, what are you specifically looking for? We can fine tune it a bit, get some feedback, because we have a direct line with the hiring manager. And sometimes things get stuck, of course, in the hiring process. You don't hear it, you want to follow it up, things are happening. I can make a brief phone call to someone and say, can you please push this through, because you want to talk to this and this person. So you have a bit of an internal position together with the hiring managers to get things done. Now, how does the model work? It's quite easy. I'm a middleman, so only one person can pay me. The employer pays me, meaning your future employer can pay me, pays me a commission based on successful payments, successful placements. Candidates don't pay a penny. And yet I represent the candidates to get things done. I need to land you the job that you feel happy about, that you're going to sign up with. So in the end, that also makes me different from a recruiter, because I need to get people signed up. That's end-to-end recruitment. It's only done, it ain't over till the fat lady sings. Only when a person is sitting on a chair in the company, I get my commission. I even can be forced to pay a commission back if a candidate leaves within, let's say, 2 months after starting. So I know a lot about the negotiation to get the deal done in the end as well. I'm going to talk about that later on. And a recruitment agency is generally not the same as a headhunter. Where are recruitment agencies good? They are what I call the volume fitters. They get a lot of offering to a potential employer, and they work more on numbers. And as such, and I'm sure they wouldn't take this as a compliment, but let's say they source more candidates to a potential employer. So, as I said in the first section, we're going to talk about a resume, a CV, how to get a good CV to land yourself a nice job as a data scientist. And let's get rid of some overall pain points for candidates. And I know your pain about rewriting a resume. Isn't it a pain to rewrite your resume so many times? And yes, that's totally true. So I'm aware that if I speak to candidates and while working with them, I ask them or I suggest them to make changes, it's a very tiring process. They've gone through it many times. It's something you want to put away at some point and just send out. And I keep on bringing these propositions to change it. Well, sorry about that. You know, people can take on board these recommendations and change their resume. I've actually stopped waiting until someone has made those changes. I just use the version that they have, simply because they're just recommendations that people can take on board. So also take my recommendations from today like that. And as people say, every time I show my resume to someone else, there's a different opinion, you know, different format, different tips. Absolutely true. But I can make one core recommendation, always have it reviewed, because you'll see you'll always find a mistake or an unclarity. And I'll give you a little tip. If a data scientist has little interpunction mistakes on a resume, you know, space, comma, instead of comma, space, and that a few times all over the resume, that's a bad sign to a hiring manager. If the person already has mistakes on his resume, how is he or she going to do when we're actually going to do some data science? So please be meticulous in scanning, rescanning your resume. Tip one. Then the question is, you know, I'm trying to get a resume on one page. It must be on one page, right? Everyone says it must be on one page. And I say, no, there's no rule. Of course, it's great to get a resume on one page, but that's not the golden rule. And actually the risk that you have when you try to push it all on one resume is that you start losing some detail and your resume becomes too generic and too interchangeable. However, going beyond 3 pages, I can scan through them quite quickly, but my brain is going, no, not good. If I bring this to a client, this client will just die of boredom trying to read it. So 3 pages is truly the maximum. One of the other risks that you see is people are trying to be complete in their resume. If I give that detail in my latest job, I must also give the same detail in the job that I did 5 years ago. Please, just make it one line saying, this is what I did 5 years ago. Simple question, very easy to answer. Do I put a photo of my lovely face on the resume? And the answer is clearly yes. And I know there's discussion about it, and I know it sounds ridiculous, but actually it's not. I truly recommend to put a picture on there because you want to connect with the person as an interviewer. You want to see who you have in front. Instead of a piece of paper, you want to say, I want to speak to that person. Especially when you have lovely hair, of course, you should put it on the picture. Good. Next topic. I know there's quite a few of nationalities in the audience, and I see a lot of resumes. And you can see quite a few flows when it comes to styles and formats and tones. And I know how to recognize them quite simply, right? I get a lot of good candidates from India, and they're very strong at stating, I was in the top percentages, my university has this ranking, I am in the top percentile of the people you want to speak with. Great. Don't forget that in other countries, people might read past that. I will also say it's important. There are so many great universities in India. When it comes to the top ranking, your country is fantastic, especially compared to other countries. So I know you want to stress it, but then try to make it clear in a different way. When you read a French resume, it's full of abbreviations, you know, acronyms, abbreviations, where you go like, what is that? Even the name of the university, I've never heard of it. And it seems that only the French understand it. That's a bit of a problem. But again, engineering universities in France are good, the top level. Many have 2 degrees even, and it's worthwhile to look into it. Not many clients do that. They are so confused by these acronyms, they don't dare looking into what it actually means, and they miss out on good engineers. Now comes the typical Dutch resume. On the Dutch resume, it says, I was befriended with Professor Max Welling. I washed his car. Anything to say that you have a relationship to a good supervisor or a professor is being flaunted, is being shown and explained. So it's very important in the Netherlands to show that you're in the right network, that you've spoken to the right people, that they appreciate you, and you put that on your resume. An American resumes, well, I have to put on my reading glasses because it's like boom, spaghetti, all kinds of detail on one page, so many words, so many things. It's just like overblowing. There's many details on value. What did I create? What was created as value within the company? But I think the most important remark is, don't worry about the format. You know, if you come across a recruiter that actually is, you know, like not appreciating that and getting too much, you know, giving too much attention to the format being used, that's not a good recruiter. Good recruiters can read past these cultural types of resumes. They can read through it and they can find the right detail and they can ask the right questions to get behind it. Just a second, I need to check my order in the pages. There I am. Okay, good. I'm going to talk a little bit about the content, of course. Now, there's one important choice to make. When you give content on a resume, never write it for a generic person. Write it for the experienced hiring manager that you want to work for your future boss. Because if things go well, the resume is good, that's the resume that will land on a hiring manager's desk. So don't try to explain context, like I made a joke, like don't write it for your mother-in-law trying to explain what data science is. Don't try to like explain it to in-house recruiters. Try to write it for the experienced hiring manager, the person who, if you're at a conference on data science, he or she will be next to you attending these conferences as well and understanding what's discussed. So you need to be specific. You need to show yourself as a specialist. And I'll come back later a bit about how you do that when you don't have that experience yet. But make sure that your resume is written for a hiring manager. Now, how do you do that? And this is a very important word that I put in there in bold. If you write it, and if you try to put that on 1 page or 2 pages, you must include something that's called undeniable details. And what are undeniable details? It's quite simple. Those are the details on a resume that you experienced when you did a project or you did a little research work, and only a person who really did it knows those details. And that will be recognized by your future boss, going like, this person can only know that if he or she did it, right? Now, why is that important? Because it will make you stand out from your generic resumes, where there are many that are comparable and are just the same. You need to show that you've done it. You can do that in describing a little project, like a little description of a project that you did. And it's not on the page here, but I'll tell you, 90% of my resumes that I have a look at, when they come to describing the IT skills, they just give the standard list. R, SQL, it's just a little sum up. And that is such a waste, because I'm sure you worked with it. I'm sure you understand it. Could you please give a little bit of detail that proves that you know more about it than just naming it? What version have you used? Was it modern C++? What have you come across? Was there a little problem with it? Was there a conflict? What libraries? Provide more details, and you'll see that you'll stand out from the 90% of the people that just list the IT skills. Even naming the version number of what you used makes a big difference already. And this is not a joke. I literally had a hiring manager from the company that I spoke about before, where I did that deep learning unit, literally called me one day and said, Casper, this is the first resume where I actually get a version number on Python and on C++. Fantastic, I want to speak to this person. It's that extreme sometimes that people stick to giving just a generic list without showing to know a little bit more about that. So that's about the hard skills. You know, that's enough challenge already, but believe me, it's important. Now I get into a more slightly more different topic, because I deal a lot with graduates as well, and you know, it's a bit of a dilemma there. How do you choose a domain or an industry?
Casper, before we move to this second part or this other related topic, can I ask you a few questions?
Go for it.
So you can breathe a little bit, maybe. So there are a few questions actually about having a photo in your resume. Someone says, well, a resume is only scanned for like 5 seconds or 7 seconds. Does it make sense to include a photo anyway? And another related question is it not something that biases the whole process, because someone or a recruiter is looking at the picture, of course, at the photo, and already have some feeling or idea about the candidate? What can you tell? What can you tell us about this?
I'm ugly. I got jobs. So I think to settle the last one, that's really not what it's about. And I think biased, speaks out of fear. Am I confident enough just to put a nice little picture on it? Well, if you're confident enough to put it on WhatsApp, why not put it on a resume? But let's come back to the main point. It is about you want to hire a person, right? And that is the simple difference that you make with a photo. So I was smiling a bit when that question came up. Of course, it's always disputed. People don't do it. People do it. Literally, it won't make a hell of a difference, but I can say, why not? Why not? You want to interview a person and you want to recognize a person. And that bias, why? If you're smiling, then that's what it is. If it's a friendly picture. You just want to recruit a person and not a machine. You want to be able to spend lunch with the person, and you don't do that with a machine or with a resume.
So also it doesn't matter if someone doesn't have a picture. It doesn't. You don't take any conclusions from this.
No, you don't make conclusions out of it, but don't get me wrong, you really want to have fun during an interview as well, right? So if you can make it more personal and not make it dreadful, an interview, it can be fun. It's, interviewers do a lot of interviews as part of their job, but they also want it to be a bit of fun and to get a bit of energy out of it. So the more interaction you can get going, and that can be personal interaction as well, I can recommend that. Is it scary? That's the question, I think. Is it scary to show a little bit of yourself, a little bit more of yourself? Of course it is scary, but there are good sales hooks. Don't forget, I work for large companies like Randstad, where it's all about sales, sales, sales. It's also a hook. It's a hook to sell yourself into a company. And you must.
Right, and they will see you anyway if they invite you for the interview, of course.
True, but that's a big barrier, Robert. When it comes to the numbers of people, I'm glad you mentioned this. This is a true important question. The number of resumes that I get and that I look through, and the number of invitations for our first interviews, that's the first big barrier. Mm-hmm. That's the challenge. So you can do many doubts before, shall I do a picture or not? If it makes it easier to get yourself selected for a first interview, believe me, just do it.
Yeah. Okay, we have another question, which is an interesting question, I think. Do you use machine learning for like evaluation in the recruitment process or evaluation of the resume? It's in your head. There's the machine learning.
Absolutely. No, there are two different parts, and I come back to the start of my presentation. There's recruitment agencies, there's recruitment tools, there's a headhunter. I need to have that collection and that specific connection with a person. So I read through all my resumes by head, right? So there's no tooling for me. I actually can also say that let's call it the storage value of a resume is low. So all machines lovingly storing data for future use. A person stays relevant during his availability period. So that's when I read it. And after a while, I'll put it aside. Maybe I pick up on it again, year and a half later, to get some information from a person or to find out whether he or she is available, and that's it. So no, I don't use that myself. No.
Mm-hmm. I understand. Okay, final question before you can continue. Someone is asking, Keen, actually, how do you recognize a good recruiting agency? That's kind of difficult if you go just Googling around.
Oh, you mean how you recognize, how you find one as a candidate?
Yes, right.
Aha. Good. It depends on the level of experience that you have. So you can trust that when you're a graduate, just pump it into the larger volume companies. I mentioned one already, Randstad, in the Netherlands, or or any of the larger companies, and they are sourcers. So one of the bigger names, Michael Page, I can name all of them, fantastic companies. Just make your details known with them. Just send it out. They actually will pick it up. They need material constantly to provide to companies, and they will send your resume out. If you have more experience, a couple of more years on the clock, there's a better chance with a specialized headhunter.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. Just continue with your presentation.
Great, thank you. Can the slides still be seen, by the way, now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I was getting to that, slightly more important topic about, I talked about getting undeniable details on your resume, and I also said make a choice about your domain or industry. And people get very confused. What is a domain? What is an industry? What is a sector? What do you mean? Well, it's quite easy, actually. I mean stuff like banking, financial services, medical, automotive, even academic research, of course, is a sector in itself. So all I'm trying to do is saying to people, try to be specific. You must stand out, and generic choices on your resume will not make you stand out. I can exchange you for any other candidate. Also, choosing for an industry means that you have an intrinsic motivation to work for a certain industry or a company. Sometimes I do this little teasing question asking, what did your parents do as a job? Because you'll see there's a little extra, motivation for a person to talk about a specific sector or industry. I'm almost through when it comes to the resume tips, but I'll deal with a few dilemmas, things that are not that easily to solve when it comes to just shifting your format or presenting yourself with a smile. And I was hoping to use maybe the chat to get one of the questions lifted out of here. Just let me know if you have a specific one that you want to know more about. But one of these dilemmas is, and I think it comes across many times, I don't have a lot of work experience yet. Will I get selected for a first interview? And how do I give the impression that I do have some work experience? That's an important one. Well, I'll give an easy answer. You can't do everything, of course, to change that except be clever. And a lot of people underestimate that the first couple of lines that a recruiter or a headhunter or a hiring manager reads on a resume are the ones that stick in his or her mind. So if you start your resume by saying, because you're all proud, you just finished your studies, I just recently graduated from University X, let's say Saad, the rest of the resume will be read as he or she is a graduate. If you're clever enough to say, I just finished a project on NLP and it greatly motivated me because now I know X, Y, Z. By the way, I am a recent graduate from Saad. You will see it gives a different impression. So don't forget that the first things that you write down determine what people have in their mind about what you are. Are you a recent graduate? Do you have experience? I never worked in the desired geographical region before, and I think I saw a question in the chat. I'm in. Were you in India, and maybe you want to work in Europe? Yes, that's a bit of a challenge. But don't forget, there are companies that actually look for you specifically because they have specialized in getting new employees straight away from a different country or a different region. And I know you can't really know that. Who is this company? What company does that? But this is maybe where a recruitment agency or a headhunter can work. So don't forget, sometimes people are really specifically looking for new employees from another country or another geographical region. What also helps, and this is actually a perfect combination, let's say you're from India, you've done your master's in, there it is again, Saarland, Max Planck. That's a great combination because then hiring managers kind of know skills are there, we like the profile, and this person is also a little bit accustomed already to being in Europe. So that's a good combination of skills. So if you're thinking about doing a master's after your bachelor's and you're in a different geographical region, why don't you step over for your master's to a totally different region where you want to work after that? Next question. I feel categorized a country according to the country that I come from. And I can be pretty straightforward. When I get this question, it always surprises me because the answer to that is no, you will not be categorized according to the country that you come from. And there are so many differences in experience between recruiters, or whether they've just started in the market, or whether they're there a couple of years, or whether the hiring manager knows exactly what he wants, or the hiring manager is just a starter. Well, let me say, if you're being judged on the country that you come from, instead of the experience that you have, you don't want to work for that hiring manager. You want to work for the hiring manager that knows that it doesn't matter which region you come from. So the answer to that is no. Next dilemma, not unimportant. I don't have a local work visa yet. So am I attractive enough to work in a certain country? Not an easy question, of course, but I'll give a few tips there. There are a few European countries, quite a few, that have an active policy, of course, in getting knowledge migrants into their country. The only problem is that per country, these rulings are different. Now, I happen to know a little bit more about the rules in the Netherlands because I'm part of something which is called the Innovation Attaché Network, which is part of the Foreign Affairs Office, where they try to stimulate innovation, and they have attachés in every country, and they are very aware of the local policies. And through that network, I know a lot about it. And I want to point out, for example, one tip. In general, the work visa depends on your employer. You know, if your employer is willing to give a contract, that's where you get the work visa. There's a few workarounds, and I want to name one specifically. If you studied in the Netherlands and you're non-EU, for example, you get an orientation year, you get to stay around to find a job for quite a long time. We want to retain our talent that we put on education programs in the Netherlands and offer them good time to find new jobs. But there is also such a program for top 200 universities from any country. So if you're in the QS list for top universities, 200, or the Times list, or your faculty is in there, you can apply in the Netherlands for something called oriëntatiejaar. And for that, you don't need an employer's visa. Of course, it's quite strict. You need to be from a specific group, but it actually allows you, if you're from this university, to take the step yourself to apply for this. It's not even expensive, and allowing you to enter into a country with the appropriate visa to work for an employer. Last tip on that, there is a list from the immigration service in the Netherlands called IND, and on that list, it actually mentions all employers that are allowed to employ non-EU knowledge migrants. And it's an extensive list, exhaustive list. So you can even use that list from the IND of employers that are allowed to get non-EU people on board as your trigger list to say, oh, what's this company? Oh, what's this company? What do they do? Let me send my resume to them. So there's workarounds for this visa situation. Last question on this page, and I think there's some more points after this about the visa, about the resume. That complaint about, listen, I've sent my resume and I haven't had an update. Very annoying. Very, very sorry about this, but this happens in the process. You cannot imagine how complex it is to actually update all the candidates in a procedure about where they are. On top of that, sometimes an employer just simply wants to keep you on board without sending you away saying, we didn't select you. So I'm very sorry about this process, but don't get annoyed by it, or try not to get annoyed by it. And it really doesn't help constantly asking for a status update. So this just happens in the business. I'm sorry. My little COVID page when it comes to resume and hiring. What's the status when it comes to COVID and hiring? No surprise, the hiring numbers have been down. But don't forget, recruitment is a very cyclical business. You know, in December, it goes down anyways, because people are trying to close down their books in a positive way. There is a good positive vibe at the end of January again. It's all very sensitive to movement, to positive movement around in the market. There is a tide against the graduates. Why? People have asked about remote working already. If you get a graduate to join at the moment, or you have the choice to get someone a little bit more experienced on board, at the moment, through the situation with remote working because of COVID, it is easier to get someone on board and to get someone to start quickly that is not a starter. So it's worked against graduates, and I've noted that this is quite a structural change because of COVID. So what's the workaround with that? Again, it's a resume trick. You must show that even if you start working remotely with a company, you know how it works. You know how to get your information. You've done that before in a project. You knew how to start. I can hit the ground running. And if you want to make it very concrete, just say it in your initial profile. Just say, I know how to hit the ground running, even in a remote way. So those are my remarks when it comes to resume, the first part of the presentation. I'll skip to the interview next, but maybe this is a good time to get some questions about resumes.
Yes, Casper. Some people are asking questions about, well, they have gaps in their resume. For example, someone has been ill for a certain period and he does not have a lot of relative work experience yet. What would you give any tips what to do with your resume, or how to fill these gaps, or just be honest?
Oh, good that you bring me there. I think it's, in American, it's called fibbing it, you know, like faking it. And we have these little hairs everywhere on our body where we can intuitively sense that there's something wrong. If people are trying to hide things, don't underestimate this intuition. People know it quite quickly. So although you think you're hiding it, or, you know, maybe they won't see it, they will feel it. So intuitively, a recruiter is actually, and hiring managers, like anyone, is very good at, you know, reading underlying messages. So no, I'll be very clear about that. And gaps, no, not nice on a resume. Unfinished studies, you know, also not very good on a resume. Start explaining why, you know, and otherwise you'll just be filtered out. So I know there's quite an extreme example of someone being ill. People are humans. People understand that after a period where you've been ill, you also deserve a break. So I can work with you and not against you sometimes.
Right. And what about if you switched jobs a lot, like every year for 5 years in a row?
Start working as a contractor or a freelancer. No. Why?
Just mention it all, or?
No, those are job hoppers. I'll tell you why. It's quite simple. And this is the HR view and the hiring manager's view. There is an investment taking place in people. And this investment takes some time. And the worst thing that happens to a hiring manager after all this intensive process is that a person leaves again after 6 months or a year, or whatever, job hoppers. And that's a total disinvestment. So no, they will not like that. And it actually wasn't a joke when I made that remark about, are you a freelancer or a contractor? Maybe you're better off in a freelancer or a contractor world if you like job hopping and if you want that shifting in environments. You know, it's also great, but then become a contractor. It's a different mindset. And it's not necessarily a negative mindset, but when it comes to full-time employment in R&D, AI, data science, they will invest in you, and they will not like it if you're being used as a stepping stone to a better job in no time.
Right. Okay, and a very different question. Someone is asking, well, you have like the, I don't know how you pronounce it, MOOCs, like some massive online courses. Mm-hmm. How do you rate this, and how do you compare it with like company course, like Google and IBM? They have like their own like courses which are available for everyone. How do you rate this or compare this to each other?
Not one answer possible to this question. And I'll name 2 extreme examples. I have a hiring manager, you know, who's very much on the conferences and the publications and the journals. And if he sees a resume that has so many MOOCs on them, he will just put it away. He doesn't like it, and that's his personal choice. He has a doctorate degree from a university. He goes to these conferences, and that's what he likes. He literally puts them aside, and that's a specific example. I'll also tell you that I got a highly specialized physics background guy who now works for a company called Microsoft in Cambridge, and he loved doing MOOCs. Every time when he wanted to learn something new, he just took it and he put it on his resume. So there's not one tell-all answer about it. I think the main thing to stress is the university that you did, or the degree that you did from your official studies.
Yes, I think so too. There are a lot more questions for you. People even want to send resumes to you, but maybe when you're done with your presentation in like 20 minutes, you can check the questions. Just
always happy to get resumes.
Yes. Just continue with your great story.
Great, thank you very much for that. And questions are fine. You know, happy guys to help out with these. Regard this as an internal talk. I'm happy to give any tips or tricks or trade from this business. So happy to see them. And the next slide with questions. I'm shifting over to a slightly shorter part during the interview. Why is it shorter? Guys, this is your magic. As soon as a recruiter or a headhunter has managed to get you over that first hump, you know, an invitation to do a talk, it's all yours. But I'll give a few tips anyways. Doing the interview, you're on your own now. Scary, huh? It's a good energy, of course, huh? It's a good energy. You've done it. You can talk to a person. Just ride that wave a little bit of that fear. It's a good fear. Now, what I can recommend is you have a few levels of preparation. And what I would say is sometimes you get an interview where you think like, am I sure I want to work in this sector or this thing? I didn't choose for it initially, and now I get this invitation to work for a sector where I haven't chosen to do it. What helps in that case is to read up on what's happening in that sector. And I was challenged about this recently, and I had to look into the changes into the financial sector. And I used the legislation framework, PSD2 framework, to actually read up on it and see what has happened in the last couple of years in this industry, in this case, the banking and financial services industry. And I started reading it, just on Wikipedia page about PSD2, a very controversial framework. I thought it was controversial. And I read it and I thought, wow, this framework offers so many opportunities for this whole sector to go through changes. And I even, in my head, learned the definition of PSD2, and I was willing to have a discussion about it. So my whole interest in an interview with a company in that sector raised. So look into a topic, whether it's legal, whether it's a sector report or anything that talks about developments in that sector, you know, so that you can find some energy yourself, as in, I find this interesting, this sector. Maybe it wasn't my first choice of an interview, but at least my interest has gone up. Learn a few terminologies, definitions. What does data monetization mean now? What is this whole privacy topic, and what are the main definitions around it? Now, during the interview, we're now at the interview. This whole preparation usually takes place like 1 day, 2 days before you actually have the interview. And no last minute, like I did my presentation, you know, preparing it last minute. Don't go into an interview all rushed, all winding yourself up. Oh, you know, I did my presentation. Boom, boom, boom. Your heart's going like that. No, just go out. Go out, have a walk, be chill, be good about yourself, and then start having the talk. Very simple suggestion for an interview. And now comes the most important one. Like I did a little bit myself into this presentation, I went into the content straight away. Boom, 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 boom. And there was no connection that I made, unless, of course, I made it with Robbe in this way, or I made it with the guys from ML6 by making a joke about them. There is always an opportunity to make a connection with your interviewer. You must force to do that. You must teach yourself, I will not start the interview until I have some personal talk going. Hey, Casper, nice clock you have on the back on the wall there. What's that? Is that a piece of antique? This is a very, people might find it an awkward way to commence a conversation, but it's a way to make a connection and to relax. And if you start a talk straight away by going into my profile's this, I've done this in the last 4 years and whatever, there is no connection made with the other person. And you must really make a challenge to create a connection. And I've written down a few examples on the slide saying, what nice plant behind you, clock, etc. You must find a way to do that. If it's too much and the interviewer thinks, okay, we've connected, nice, pleasant, now let's start the interview. The interviewer will tell you when that moment is started, right? You must find that personal connection. And this is the interview, you get your questions, you know, you try to answer as much as possible. And again, I come back to the point of showing some technical details. Even if the interviewer doesn't ask you for the technical details, you must find an opportunity to give some evidence, some proof that you've actually done it. You must go into some detail and create that moment yourself by saying, this is how I would do that. And it might be an awkward moment in the talk where the interviewer at first thinks, hey, I didn't even ask a question about that, but it's about giving that proof that you've done it, and recently that you've done it. I can't, of course, tell what kind of detail that is. That depends on the question or your background, but you must go into that. Now, done that, had a few questions. Again, it's about connection. Sorry to do a bit of soft talk, but I'm also dealing with data scientists, computer vision experts, and deep learning experts. You have to round up the talk, and you have to crack a joke. Again, you have to come back to the connection. And I've heard excellent examples, positive examples, of interviewers who cracked a joke together with the candidate. Someone prepared a question about PSV, the football team in Eindhoven. And the interviewer just laughed because he came out of a great capital and he realized it was just a joke to cover the insecurity about moving to Eindhoven, which is a great city, but it's not, you know, New York or anything. So it just gets things going in a positive way. But they're also a tactical way to show that you're ready to move to a different city. Don't forget, this is at the end where you've done your last interview, and the interviewer must feel that this person is ready to move to another city, to set himself or herself into a new job. So making jokes about readiness, I'm ready for this, in an anecdotal way is a perfect way to show that you're ready to make the move to, in this case, Eindhoven. And of course, quite cleverly, always ask for what's next. And don't forget, it's actually quite gentle to send a little message, an email to an interviewer this same evening or latest the next morning saying, thank you very much. I enjoyed that. These are my contact details. Looking forward to hearing from you next. You'll see that these kind of polite messages stick around, and hiring managers mention it to me that they appreciate it. So you've done the talk, and you sit back in your room and you think like, oh, it didn't go well, and I didn't say the things they wanted and whatever, you know, like, don't care. Get that out of your mind. You did your best. Don't get stuck in these and just look around for the next one. I know that the people who have a very important talk, the best thing they can do is just double it up with another track of another company after they've done the important one that they really want, that they already have a backup interview running. Just make yourself feel better. You've done your best. People are usually quite drained after interviews, candidates, I mean. You know, you've given a lot, you want to show your best side, boom, the whole thing collapses after the talk. That doesn't say a lot. However, if I check with candidates, did it go well? And they say, you know, this and this went well. However, there it didn't go that well. That's usually a sign that that will be picked on and maybe you don't get the best result. So you can intuitively feel whether it went really well or not. Maybe some questions about doing the interviews from the candidates, Robert.
Yes. There are many questions. Let me see. Okay, Casper, could you list the top 3 to 5 European countries that are looking for international specialists? Well, in the field of machine learning then, of course.
Germany, Netherlands? No. Well, I think I can only base that out of my own experience at the moment, and of course I present it as a joke. But I work very happily together with France. When it comes to their visa situation, it's a little bit more specific. Germany turns out to be easier when it comes to visa situations. There's good companies there, and the Netherlands are the little brother of Germany, of course. So I named the 3 countries that have a nice access, that are very comparable, and you trust me, you have a good volume of opportunities if you scan these countries. Learn about the visa situation. Look up the immigration office and see if you can find something specific about it.
Okay,
you need all 3 countries to understand it. All 3 have different rules, of course.
Yes. Okay, thanks. Someone, Linda Hovius, is asking, or she would like to know, which university degrees or diplomas are most valued by you personally?
Max Planck, UvA, Leuven. I love Spanish universities. Good, you know, open, tolerant people come out of that. Welcomed in other countries. Good movers as well. Italy, I work a lot with that, for example. When it comes to France, there's these top league engineering schools that you need to understand. ENS and HEC and all these abbreviations that come with it. There's quite a few, but my clients don't recognize them that quickly. So in general, I see in the Netherlands, there's a good landscape when it comes to data science and AI of all kinds of varieties of studies that you can do in all kinds of universities. It's a good, mature landscape, right? So if you're thinking about the studies, where to study, I think the Netherlands offers you a good wide range of topics to do. And they are good universities as well. Of course, there's a league in there, you know, the natural classical ones like Delft, UvA. Ooh, where should I go? Eindhoven are wanted, and then you have another league after that. So I can name a few, and if I see Max Planck, trust me, my eyes go boom. I read that resume because they picked on these people, and Max Planck Institute is linked to Saarland University. There's an upcoming one in Germany called Tübingen University. You see a lot of assistant professors and professors moving there. There's ETH in Zurich. You know, if you have the money to live in southern Germany or Switzerland, you get invited there. Great university there. EPFL in Switzerland, fantastic. Istanbul, ITU, plenty of
Options all around, all across Europe. Okay, Casper, you are not at the end, right, of your presentation?
No.
No, but we have like 5 minutes left for presentation. And then we can answer a few more questions. So,
mind if I scan quickly through my pages to see if I, yeah?
Maybe you can pick out the most valuable part.
Yep, exactly. This one.
Okay, go ahead.
So if you get a job offer from a company, that usually means they want to proceed into getting to the point where they make a contract. And people get nervous around that time. You know, even HR gets a bit nervous. It's a very official document, a job contract and a job offer. So you'll see that the nerves around this whole period, they start going up. Don't be too scared about that. But I'm going to shift over to this famous word, negotiations, just to give that little nugget. How does that work? When it comes to negotiations about your package, in the Netherlands, people feel very uncomfortable in general to start some negotiations. Well, don't be. It's quite common in the Netherlands, at least, or Western Europe, to do some negotiations about your salary. And people regard it as mature to do it. If you don't do it, you're an easy catch, almost. But you have to feel all the time. And there's in the middle of the page somewhere a section where it says, if you feel you reach the bottom of the barrel, you have to stop. You have to think like a lawyer. I reached it. If I push it more, they will get annoyed. In general, but this is structure. You get a base salary. In the Netherlands, you get holiday money, 8% of your salary. You can always say, is that salary with or without the holiday money? There's something called 30% ruling in the Netherlands, where you get the tax advantage. So these are the elements that you must understand. And there's some bonus stuff and a little joining fee that you can get. But they'll also tell you how you get a basis. You know, what's a good starting point for me to say, okay, I want to start talking about my salary. And for that, again, I will point you into the direction of the immigration services into European countries. Why? The immigration services in many cases have defined benchmarks, salary benchmarks that people must earn in order to qualify for these knowledge migrant work visas. And these benchmarks, of course, are known with the HR people. And of course, they know that they can negotiate down to that benchmark in order to offer contracts to people. So be wise, look up these benchmarks locally in a country from the immigration service and understand that that is the starting benchmark that you must know in order to make a realistic proposition. And I talk, of course, out of graduates. When you have more experience, you can up it, that's clear. But again, the benchmarks means that companies can get alternative employee suggestions closer to that benchmark if you go too high. And that will give you a reasonable starting point. I think overall, what's best, guys, girls, never guess. Never mention an amount that you guessed. Hey, my buddy in Silicon Valley said he can earn this. It's killing for propositions. If you don't want to do it, if you don't want to guess, just say what you earned in your last job. Nothing wrong with that. That is totally normal. People will up it in negotiation and make sure that you get a little bit more, and they understand you will not join if you don't earn more than your last job. Just be realistic about it. Don't second guess. And also take a bit of gutsy moment to go through some negotiations. Once it starts making you feel very uncomfortable and you're ready to accept, then at some point you need to accept as well. I can only say candidates that go for a data science job in general, when you start negotiations, trust me, it's a very nervous phase that people don't generally want to do. Ask for some advice, then do it. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. It will be a bit formal and it will be a bit jumpy when you do this whole negotiation thing. Once it's signed, the contract is signed, you'll feel a relief and it's all gone again. But that last formal phase together with HR, that's formal, the candidate who negotiates is a little bit, like uncomfortable as a phase. Last page. I'll just put it up while I maybe deal with some questions.
This is the last one?
This is just for reading while I'm dealing with the questions. I'm just leaving it up. It's got my personal details at the end, all those lovely resumes. But Robert, if there's any questions in the chat.
Someone is asking you if you can share the slides afterwards. Well, we will arrange that. Well, I'm not sure if you want.
No, I thought about it, to be honest. Guys, you're happy to have them. Don't start floating them around too much. I'm giving inside tips on negotiations. Be reasonable, please. And use them to your own benefit. I don't want them to appear on the internet.
Do you want people to approach you directly for this, or
Yes.
Okay, great. So everyone know. Let's see another question. Someone is asking. Oh, that is this. Maybe I missed this point earlier, but is it possible to send the CV to Casper? Yes, we know. Okay, what's the difference, Casper, in terms of questions in the different interview rounds?
What's the difference in a prepared or structured way of a company to approach the interviews instead of an ad hoc, a pragmatic way to approach the interviews? I think that's the more relevant question. You'll see that some companies have done the whole preparation of the interview rounds in a very organized way. Usually what's behind it is that they want people from the department who already work there to have the opportunity to meet the candidates, to see if they fit in. That's why they structured it. So the future peers, your future colleagues, can they have a good look at you and can sniff you out. That's when you see that they've structured it completely. That's a sign that you are part of a department. When it's a little bit more pragmatic, you meet one person who asks you questions and then you're not completely sure what's going to happen after this. You'll see it's more dependent on working with that specific person. You're being interviewed by that person, maybe even as an assistant or in his or her team specifically. So that's usually behind why it's structured or not. And the question to the answer, what kind of questions can you expect? It all depends on this structured or unstructured approach to do interviews. So not one answer possible, sorry.
Okay, thank you. And then there is a question about the slide, which is on the screen now. Are you able to explain a bit more on the second point of the current slide? So European companies are definitely more academic style research orientated.
Yeah, correct. What you see there is in general, people, if they finish their studies, they want to continue a bit with their research work. I think the previous presentation also explained the difference between engineering and research. And in general, I think that even if you look at US firms that have an office in, let's say, the Netherlands, they recruit people who can continue to do research straight from university, even in buildings next to the universities. They can continue to do research-oriented work. So there's a little bit more freedom to determine the direction that you want to take when it comes to your research in the Netherlands in general. You see that culturally, it's slightly more determined in other regions, like let's say the US. And even if you do a request to go to a certain conference, it must be in your area, it must be related to a work product, etc. And then you get permission. In the Netherlands, it's an aim in itself to attend as many conferences as possible.
Okay, I have a final question, which is for myself, actually. Do you, if and how do you check the things which are in a resume? I mean, for example, you can write everything in your CV, of course. What are the ways how you or maybe recruiters in general handle this? are you checking things, or maybe only
verifying things, like
yeah.
what's being said, is that true?
Right.
Hardly, I'll be honest. So there's not, first of all, it's not considered to be done to go for checking without checking that with a candidate. You know, I'm checking things behind your back. That's not considered polite. So there's quite a lot of trust that what's written down is actually true. You know, they will not go for references without telling the candidate, I'm contacting a reference. It's actually not done.
Yeah,
so in that sense, they are putting a lot of belief in their intuition, in their experience, and they will trust that during the talks, a candidate can fall through the cracks or not. And simple example, if I ask a candidate, you put C++ on your resume, which version? And they go, it's been a while ago. Beep.
Yeah, right.
So there is a few check questions. Sometimes they're done jokingly, but sometimes they're also done to check a candidate.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, Casper. It was very long and valuable talk, I guess.
Lose all the people?
Sorry?
Did we lose all the participants?
No. It was running up, so no, that's good. Please, if you have some time left, because there are quite some questions, some open questions, but also some answered questions. I guess you can answer them online, right?
Yeah, you mean right? I can have a look at the chat.
Yes, right. Okay. Thank you very much. And we're going to the next speaker, which is Damien. Are you online there already? Yes, I can see you.
I'm here.
Yes, well, we are running 3 minutes late, but that's not that much. Casper, can you...
Working on it.
Screen.
Yes.
Okay, Damien, you are the last speaker for this summit, for our 2-day summit. You are a developer advocate specialized in machine learning at IBM. And you are going to talk about, well, actually you're going to take us through the day of a data scientist while discussing a case, right?
Yeah, sure. It's actually taking you through about 6 months of being a data scientist, these past 6 months. But yeah, I'll try to focus on the actual job that you have as a data scientist. Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, can you maybe start with a little background, just in like 1 or 2 minutes, and then you can just go ahead with your presentation.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I've been working at IBM for quite a while, almost 25 years, to be honest, in several jobs. So I studied artificial intelligence in the early 90s in Utrecht, when cognitive artificial intelligence as a study was just starting. I was the second group to study there. So I finished that in 1995, and since then we had from our study already some contacts within IBM, because they were already doing some advanced data analysis. Not many people were doing it at the time, because it wasn't really feasible to do it on your own system. So you need a big machine, a lot of iron to do the right kind of analysis. So yeah, after my studies, I applied at IBM, and actually had quite a job convincing the people at IBM that something like data mining would be important at the time. But it took me a couple of months to get in there. But then I talked to the right guy, and he said, "Yeah, this is what we need. So let's go ahead." So since then, been working at IBM in services. Started in services, lots of customer projects, analyzing data for customers, doing some of the advanced stuff that we now call data science. And spent a couple of years in software group in a more commercial role, being responsible technically for the SPSS software that IBM acquired. And the past 2 to 3 years, I'm a developer advocate. Yeah, which means I do sessions like this, you know, with all kinds of audiences, trying to inspire people to work with all this technology, and eventually, obviously, because IBM is a commercial company, maybe convincing them to do that with IBM technology. So there you go. Okay,
thank you very much for this introduction. Well, you can just start with your presentation. I don't know, are you going to use slides or?
No slides. It's all live coding. Everything runs online. So what I show you is running live on my system here, and I'm presenting it to you. So that also means if you have a question when I'm, for example, showing a country or showing something, and you say, okay, can you show it in a different way or something else? We might even try to do that live. But then again, it's only 40 minutes, so it won't be much of that possible. But we'll see what we do. So yeah.
What I can do is like halfway, I can ask you 1 or 2 questions, and then we can do 1 or 2 questions more at the end. Is that okay?
Yeah, fine with me. Yeah, and I'll try to keep an eye on the chat and the questions as well. If something pops up that I could answer easily directly, I will try to. Okay. So I'm looking sideways at my screen where the presentation stuff is, where my notebooks are running. And when I'm looking this way, I'm looking at the chat. So, so there you go. Yeah.
Okay, the screen is yours, so go ahead.
Yep. I'll just share my environment with you. Right, there you go. So you should see something that looks like a Git repository.
Yes, we see it.
If you've never seen one before, don't worry. I'll try to do this as an introductory session. But yeah, there will be some more advanced stuff as well. So yeah, keep asking questions, and we'll see what you can get out of this, because that's what it's all about, I guess. Right. So yeah, what happened? So I told you my day job at IBM is well, more or less doing sessions like this. So for the past 6 months, doing them online. So this is not the first one. I've done 20-30 sessions on this in the past 6 months with I guess over 1,000 people attending by now. So if I'm going too fast, because I've done this lots of times, please raise your hand and tell me to slow down or explain a little bit more. Yeah, so in the beginning of the year, I was looking for new material for workshops for this year. I usually present stuff that I built myself to explain to people how this stuff works and how you can work with it and be successful with it. So I was looking for new material and looking around, and then obviously the Corona crisis broke out in China, starting then at that time, already starting a little bit in the Netherlands. I remember that I did a session on the last Friday of February together with somebody from Red Hat when the first case was announced during that session. So somebody picked up his phone and said, we have a Corona case in the Netherlands. So that was the last Friday of February. So that, yeah, it all got quite exciting at that point. But also for me, it got a little bit dull as well, because we were all asked to work from home as at IBM, as everybody, and still working from home. Luckily, I've a good office, home office, because I already worked 1 or 2 days from home at the time. Yeah, looking for new material. So it was, yeah, quite logical that I would look into COVID data. I mean, I'm a data scientist by profession, but it's still a big hobby of me as well. So I just started looking for data and see what I could get from it. At the same time, my wife, who's a nurse, was starting to get very busy at our local hospital. Working with Corona cases, so she was in full isolations for a couple of days per week. So yeah, I was also thinking, what can I do as a data scientist? Can I, from that data, do any kind of contribution to relieving all the problems that started cropping up at the time? So yeah, I just fired up an environment, started a repo on Git, and started working on this stuff. So the first step was looking for data, as usual, which is pretty usual as a data scientist, starting at a project. Where's the data? So one of the first sites that had available data was the European Centre for Disease and Prevention and Control, the EU CDC, which is basically, if you're from the Netherlands, we have the RIVM. So this is the European RIVM. And they already had a daily updated file with Corona cases worldwide. And that's one of the first things I thought. I need data from as many different situations as possible, because if you analyze data and you only focus on the Dutch data, anything that you get from that will only work in the Dutch environment. It's usually not very well generalizable. But if you start with data from all around the world and you find similarities between, let's say, Finland and New Zealand and South Africa and Brazil, then it's probably something that is generally true about disease outbreaks. So I try to start with a relatively limited data set, just case data, but a broad range in the data, and that's always a good starting point. So yeah, it's basically there's simply an Excel file available here, so you can simply download that. It's an easy format. It's also available in text formats, but at the time the text formats were not very stable, so I started out with the Excel data. Yeah, and I just fired up my own Jupyter Notebook environment. You may have seen this before, probably have, I guess, if you're in this session. But yeah, it's the tools that the typical data scientist uses as open source tools. And to be honest, at the time, I didn't have that much experience with Python and notebooks and stuff. I have a lot of data science experience, but with lots of other tools. So for me, it was also a deep dive. Finally, I would almost say at that point into Python and notebooks and how does this stuff work. So yeah, fired up a notebook, and I always try to set up this kind of environments as where one module or one notebook in this case tries to pick up its own data, does something with it, and produces an output file. Yeah, because you can tweak around in the notebook to get the right kind of output. And after you've finished, you've got something that you can put into a production pipeline. Like it takes up data, it does its stuff, it produces an output file or output information, and then the next notebook can run. So that's always advisable to start at least in this way. So this notebook simply downloads the file that we just looked at. It downloads the Excel file. A couple of basic stuff like using the right libraries, pandas for data manipulation, NumPy for numeric stuff. It's not new if you've worked with this kind of stuff. And then yeah, let's have a look at what the data is. Always the first look at data, which is for me always an exciting moment. Open up the data file and what's in there. So yeah, and I decided to start with as simple data as possible. So what I decided was to use the dates reported, which is a date column here. I looked at the cases in the first case because that was the most stable data at the time. We can have a long discussion about the reliability of these figures, but we won't get out of that in before 7, I would say. So let's say I just picked 3 columns: the date reported, the number of cases on that date, and then some kind of region, some kind of dimension that you have in your data. And I chose the GeoID because that's an ISO standard, and it should be fine, and it should be unique, and there shouldn't be no problems with that. And mind you that I say should, because obviously there are problems with it. There's always problems with the data. So yeah, I just started ingesting this data. Yeah, you run into all kinds of problems. I mean, even with this kind of data, which is neatly curated and people look at it and try to take care that it's also always fits. But then, for example, which is one of the first thing I ran into, there's a country called Namibia, and you can guess the GeoID for Namibia, which is NA. And then you find out that the pandas read Excel, which I used to read the Excel file. By default, every cell where there's an NA is read as not available, as missing data. So that's the usual stuff. It never works out of the box. You pick up a data file, somebody tells you exactly how it is formatted, and it is not formatted like that. There's always problems in there. Suddenly, if you have a comma separated file, then the next day there's semicolons instead of commas. The quoting isn't right. There's always stuff that you have to solve. Yeah, and I think that's one of the most important aspects of being a data scientist, is always being curious about that, always thinking, how does this work? Where does this come from? Why do I have missing values? Never just assume and just say, yeah, there's some missing values, I don't care, let's just go on. Try to find out why, and because that learns you a lot about the organization that you're working for, the data, where it came from, the process where the data comes from. So it's always very, very important to stay curious and really want to know what's going on here. So yeah, one of the first things here, Namibia, which in an NA country. Yeah, then you do some checks on the data. So it's always checking. That's something that's become part of me in the meantime. So in this case, I look if all the columns that I want to use, the date reported, the cases, and the GeoID, have all their values present. So is the number the same? So I miss a couple of lines for country territory code. The population data for all the countries isn't known. But for the columns that I need, I've got all the data. So it's always checking. Even if somebody says there's no missing data, still check, is there missing data? How much is it? Why is it there? Where does it come from? What does it mean? That's always something you're busy with, and that's, to be honest, something you should really like doing. If you don't like that, if you think, well, all that messy data, what do I do with it? You might think again if you really want to be a data scientist, because this stuff happens. It always happens. And if you get sad from that kind of stuff, you may get sad for quite a while in your career if you start working on this. So that's just a little warning. But yeah, I live from this stuff. I always want to know, why is it there? Where did it come from? So yeah, checking always. So here again, I'm sure that I took out all the missing values, and then still I say, okay, do I have anything that is missing? And I need to have an empty table here, because otherwise I missed something. So always, even if you correct it for everything, still you check if it's still correct. Yeah, so then we have this data set, 3 columns, countries in the column, and I would like it in a different format, because for analyzing it's not that easy. I would like to compare countries next to each other. So what do? You manage your data, so you get this kind of format for this kind of analysis, which is the easiest. There's a pivot statement. So yeah, what I did is I pivoted the data around. So now I've got 2 big slices. One of them is the cases. I also made a slice for deaths to compare those to each other later on. Every line is now a date, so I should have unique dates as a line. So every line is a date, and the countries are in the columns. So you can already see stuff here. For example, you see that AD, which is Andorra, small country in Europe, did not deliver any data for the last day of last year. It's not available. But the Arab Emirates, for example, they did already report data, but they reported 0 cases. So here you've already got something where you can think, okay, what's going on here? Is this important? Do I need to look at this kind of stuff? So yeah, this is just a couple of examples. There's lots more, but I won't go into all of them because of time. But I think the message is clear, that already from an overview like this, you can start asking questions to the people where you got this data from, and that is crucial in your work as a data scientist. Never just ignore that and think, we'll see later on, because it will cause problems afterwards, and you won't understand your own results or anything. So start asking questions right away. Yeah, so there you go. So yeah, a little bit of description, and then yeah, straight into graphs, which is pretty easy. If you got your data in that kind of format, you can simply attach a plot to it, and it will draw a line graph for you. So that's the next step that I always take. Start visualizing stuff. What does it look like? So here you got all the case data for the Netherlands. This is the first wave in the beginning of the year, and these are all the cases that we are measuring right now. And then the question right away is, what exactly is displayed here? This is not infections. This is a representation of infections. What this actually shows is the number of cases that were tested positively. That is what you show. What is shown here. That should have some kind of relation to infections. We all hope, but that is exactly what's showing here. So that's always something as well. Be very precise in what you show and what you actually are analyzing, because this comes out of a process, and that process hides the actual reality. The actual reality is people getting infected. There's a process of measuring that, and what you get here as an analyst, as a data scientist, is the output of the process. So there could also be all kinds of process effects in here, which are not in the real world, but yeah, this process is between you and the real world. So you have to find out what's going on there. Typical example here, if you look at the disease data for the Netherlands, you see this big sawtooth effect, where there's, if you zoom into this, there's always many more cases reported on Tuesdays. So are actually people dying more on Tuesdays? No, they're not. It's the reporting process, where people that die over the weekend are usually reported on Tuesdays. So yeah, that's something you see, and something you should wonder, something you should even worry about, and try to find out what's going on here. So never just look at this graph and say, okay, so this is the trend. No, look at the details as well, and really try to find out what's going on here. So this is just an example, but you'll run into all this kind of stuff when you start working with real life data. So yeah, all kinds of visualizations. So all this stuff is available. So if you are already a bit up to speed in these kind of environments, we'll share the Git page with you, which is pretty simple. It's just gitlab.com/dayzwietering/corona, which you probably can't read, but we'll send you the link. So all this stuff is freely available, so you can run this for yourself. So I would almost say have a look. Yeah, so this is process stuff. What comes out of the process? This is typically dirty data. When we look at the graph for China, in this case, where somewhere in February they found out that they had 15,000 cases reported, but they did not have a date for those cases. So what they decided is, yeah, we'll just put all these cases on one date. And if you then draw the graph, you get this kind of weird spike here, where within a reasonably nice curve that you have, you suddenly get this huge spike of 15,000 people. So yeah, you have to deal with it. You can ignore it. You can spread them out over the days around, but you have to take some decision about that. And usually you can't take the decision yourself as a data scientist. So again, communication is essential here. Talk to the people where this data come from and discuss with them how to deal with that. You can't just decide on your own just to ignore those cases, for example. Because then your totals don't add up anymore. Your graph looks a lot better, but in the end you miss 15,000 cases. So yeah, so even if you do that, at least document it and communicate it, but you should discuss it. Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff there. There's a lot of checks in here. I always say if I get this kind of data in a graph, I start checking my own process of manipulating the data to see if this is really there in the original data. It might be that I made an error, which causes this peak. So here I look at the original data file and I see indeed that on the 13th of February we had this huge number. So it's actually there, which is also something that you should always check before you start discussing where does this peak come from. First check if maybe it's you that caused it. But that's general tips. Yeah, so lots of graphs. You can do logarithmic graphs. We won't go through all of them, so be my guest and have a look at them. You can look at relative cases compared to yesterday. So how fast are the cases still rising for countries? You can look at the amount of days that it takes for the amount of cases to double. It's all kinds of measures that I found in articles and found in papers, but also just in the news. Where I just said, okay, can I reproduce them with the data that I have? Which is also always a very good verification. If I see the graph for the Netherlands and I take my own data and my own process, do I get the same graph? That's an important one before you even start modeling. So yeah, lots of stuff. And I first looked at, can I say something about the severity for the care system? So how hard is our system actually hit by this outbreak, and then you have to understand what the shape is of such an outbreak. So for example, here I've got two of them for the Netherlands and for Belgium, and yeah, you can see that they have a more or less similar shape. There's a steep rise, then it plateaus, and then you also see that the tail of this distribution that you see here is a bit longer than the start. So yeah, I found, for example, that people assumed this would be symmetrical. So they said, okay, if we have this rise, we also have probably have the same kind of tail in the distribution. But obviously that wasn't true because we see this all over the place. I've looked at, well, in this case, 180 countries and lots of different outbreaks in regions as well. And you always see this similar shape in the outbreak. So yeah, my next question was, what does the shape look like? Because then if you know what the general shape is, and you have the rise of the shape in a country or in a region, you might be able to predict the rest and do a prediction about what would be going on there and how many people would be infected, probably, how hard would the care system be hit, stuff like that. Yeah, so I looked really into distributions, and we won't go deep into that because that will take quite some time, and it took me 2 months to find out how this exactly works. So I found a kind of distribution which is called the Gumbel distribution, which describes in a very general way the typical shape of outbreaks like this. So for example, you see a couple of examples with different parameters, and you can see that this kind of shape, for example, the blue one here, looks very much like a disease outbreak that you typically see. And believe me, I've looked a little bit better than looks similar to. I dived into the mathematics and really looked if this would be a feasible way of modeling. Yeah, and then if you really dive into the theory, and I learned a little bit about epidemiology, which is also usual as a data scientist. When you dive into the data of a certain subject, you have to become a little bit of an expert in that subject as well to understand what the data is about. So I really dived into that, and at a certain point you say, okay, I've got enough evidence that this is probably the way that this stuff looks like, that it's probably modeled or measured. And then I'm going to turn around the assumption, which is typical data science activity. And I'm saying, okay, now I'm going to assume that this is the right way to do it. And then I'm going to see if I can fit that to my data. That's usually what you do. So you look at the data, you look at the theory and the process behind it, then you form some kind of assumption in your head. I think it is working this way, and then you test your assumption. I mean, that's basically, that's almost, I would almost say that that's the science part of data science, to approach it that way. So yeah, doing that, I just looked at, can I fit the data at least partially for several outbreaks, several countries with the original data, and yeah, it worked pretty well. So if you look at, for example, the fit that I did to the first outbreak in the Netherlands, according to this Gumbel distribution, at least visually, but there's a lot of measures behind that as well, where you can see how well it fits. At least visually, it looks pretty good. I'll just enlarge it a little bit by changing the Y limit. Let's see if we put that to 2000. You'll see that part a little bit bigger. Missed an is there. There you go. So there, you see the first outbreak in the Netherlands in the early year, and you see the blue data is the actual data, which you recognize probably from the earlier graphs. The orange one is smooth data. That's how I took out this sawtooth pattern. I always take a week average there. And then I fit this green line to that data. And you can see it fits pretty well, and you can look at all the details, obviously, to see if it actually fits well numerically as well. So now I have a kind of description of my data. This is a model, and it may not be the model that you think of as a data scientist as what you usually do, like you have an output column and you have input columns and you model something like a neural network to it. But this is also a model. I mean, it's a different approach. It's a time series, but it's also a way of modeling. Yeah, and then I already saw, obviously, that there's lots more data behind the curve. There's already a second curve shape like effect here. There's a big second wave here where it really goes through the roof. So what I did, and that's another a big part of the investigation that I did, I tried to do this repeatedly. So I developed a little algorithm that says, okay, I'm going to assume that the first outbreak is Gumbel shaped. Take that out of the data and then see if you can find another Gumbel shape for the second outbreak. Yeah, and I developed that based on those assumptions. And this is what came out after, I would almost say after another 2 months, because it was quite some work in parameterizing this in the right way. And what you get here is some kind of clustering, which is based on this first model of which you saw before. That tries to find out what are all the underlying outbreaks in this general curve that we have. So the general curve is the blue one, which is behind all the other curves. You can see it's sticking out on the right a little bit here. So that's the blue effect here. And what the algorithm tries to do, it tries to cluster the data into those typical outbreak patterns that you see. Yeah, and if you look at it in detail, you can actually learn a lot from that. If you look at the first part, for example, and I'll just draw the graph until the 1st of July here. That's 2020-07-01, which should work, yes. So here you see the first part of the outbreak in the Netherlands, and that's a typical pattern that you see. And then you try to tie it to the reality of course. Is this something that could have happened, obviously, or is this some weird pattern that I found, which is only mathematically? And then you see, for example, in the Netherlands, you see this typical first smaller outbreak, which is the green one here. That is probably what I've seen in lots of countries and investigating it. Probably people coming from outside the country starting the infection in the Netherlands in this case. This big red one by start date and also by size. The size information is just a little bit above here, so you can see there's almost 30,000 infections in this wave. The size and the shape and the date relate very much to the carnival that we had in the Netherlands, which was a big outbreak of COVID. Here you see a couple of the larger cities following. If you look where these cases actually are and the timing of them, that's probably what happened there. There's a small one here that I can't really place, but I haven't looked in all the details. But then further on, you see here, you see 3 following waves after this larger one. And if you look at the start dates, it is more or less, this one starts more or less 1 week after Mother's Day. This one starts more or less 1 week after Easter. And this third one starts more or less a week after the Whitsun weekend, where we also had quite some large demonstrations in the Netherlands. So yeah, you'd have to verify this with an epidemiologist and perhaps even a behavioral specialist to find out did people actually how did people actually behave at that time? Because yeah, you are looking at human behavior here. But yeah, it might very well be that these waves, these outbreaks can be tied to certain events or certain behavior in a country. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do with this kind of model. It doesn't give you the answers right away, but it tries to prompt you to further investigate and discuss this with the people that are more expert in this area, so the real domain experts, which I did, and yeah, it seems to make sense. And then the nice thing is for the last wave that I shape here, you can also see how it will probably project into the future. And that is also a limit to the prediction power of this kind of stuff. I cannot predict a new wave because that is depending on human behavior. For example, if there's a big party, illegal party there somewhere next weekend, I can't predict that the party will be there. The only thing that I can do probably after a week is see that there will be a new wave of outbreaks and model that further into the future. So I can project the current situation, but obviously I can't predict what's going to happen. That's also a limit of the input data. I mean, I'm still working with these 3 columns: date, number, and region. So that's this is about everything that you can get from that limited amount of data, I would say. And you can also see that we have a very steep downgoing trend in the Netherlands, but it is there's a worrying bulge here where the downgoing trend is being broken. So probably in a couple of days, there will be something like a new wave fitted to that, where I can try to find out how big that is and what will happen. Yeah, so last thing, it's almost 7 and I've already told you quite some stuff here. Communication is here again. I mean, this is eventually the graph that I use to communicate. And then what I did is I decided to calculate this for all countries in the world. So believe me, I've got lots of afternoons staring at all these kind of graphs. And then I tried to think of a way to present this data for all countries together. Yeah, the obvious solution there would be a map. Luckily, there's lots of Python procedures and libraries available for mapping data. So I found Folium, which is a very nice one. There's lots of others as well. There's a whole GeoPandas library as well for complex analysis. But Folium enables you, if you get your data in the right format, which is quite a nightmare because you have to have it exactly in the right format. But if you get it that way, you can eventually easily plot it on a map, and I'll show you what comes out of that. So this is for all dates, for all countries, the infection data worldwide. So you can see starting in China, not that big of an outbreak relatively. So these are all absolute numbers. You can see Europe following, US comes up. You see that Russia comes up now, Brazil, it moves to the Middle East, India starts there, other parts, South Africa comes up for a while, but luckily it also goes down again. And you can see the second wave going into Europe here, and you can see that it really starts breaking out there again. And Russia comes up again. We hope that their vaccine will work, but we haven't seen any signs yet, to be honest. And you see that the date here actually runs 1 week into the future, so it's projecting as well. It's an interactive map, so you can also zoom in into it and really see what's going on in the countries. So yeah, this shows you all the data that I gathered and all the modeling together in one display, which is something that you can have a look at to see how stuff works. But it's obviously also a discussion picture with the experts. Yeah, to try to understand what I'm looking at, because I can see stuff moving from the Middle East back to Europe, but what actually happened there is something to discuss with an epidemiologist, I would say. Yeah, that's I guess you won't do this all day every day and all of this in one day, but these are typically things that you work with: data, visualizations, modeling, a bit of research into the subject area that you're working on. Yeah, I would say prepare for that and stay curious.
Thank you very much, Damien. Thank you. It was a very detailed talk.
Yeah.
A very good view on what a data scientist or machine learning engineer could work on. We don't have that much questions, but we do have a few, of course.
Yeah, sure.
One of the questions is, what kind of factors will you consider in order to predict the outbreak?
Yeah, if you really want to start predicting outbreaks, then the problem is here that you're really looking at human behavior, which is very hard to predict. And also, I looked, for example, in the severity of the outbreak related to the measures in the country. So, for example, if there's a lockdown, do I see less of an outbreak than I would expect, for example? So, does the lockdown influence the outbreak? But you're always looking at an indirect effect. That's the whole problem, because a lockdown in a country with a culture like Japan, for example, has a much different reaction from the people, a lot different behavior than if you do a lockdown in the Netherlands. So it's almost impossible to predict that kind of stuff, to be honest. And it's also very difficult to exactly find out how measures would influence that. That's so much a cultural and a human behavior thing. Yes. That prediction is almost impossible here.
Yes, I understand.
No.
Someone else is asking, it was like, I think 5 to 10 minutes ago, if you were using the Gaussian mixture model.
No, I can understand that it reminds you of the Gaussian mixture model, but I did a different approach because I used a different distribution. So it's not a Gaussian mixture model, but you could represent it with a Gaussian mixture model, if that answers your question.
Ah, okay, yes.
But that's a pretty technical answer.
Yeah, right.
So no, but you could, yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Damien. It's exactly 7 o'clock. So we are actually done with our first Data Science Career Summit. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope you will join us next time again, maybe next year.
Sure, yeah, would love to, yeah.
So thanks again. Well, we finalized our Career Summit. As I said, in 2 days we had like hundreds of visitors from really like literally people from all over the world. I'm here. Yes, you can see me, right?
I stopped sharing, so I guess so. Yeah.
Okay. Well, yes, I'm there. So I hope you enjoyed it all. I want to thank all the speakers and all the attendees for both today and yesterday. It was really exciting to organize and to host this event together with the European Leadership University. In case you are considering studying data science, have a look at elu.nl, and for jobs and events and the data science career blog, go to AIgents.co. I hope we will be back next year. Well, we will make sure that we will be back next year. So see you then. Thank you very much and bye-bye. Have a nice evening.